I also found no signs of poisoning on secondary consort Grant's body, the physician explained, his voice trembling as he avoided James Sinclair's darkening expression. Emily Carter sighed, her tone even more assured. Your Highness, now that the truth is clear, you surely won't continue to foolishly consider me the murderer. James Sinclair glanced at Emily Carter before instructing the two men, today's findings are not to be shared with a fifth person. As for Isabella Grant's death, the official statement will be suicide by poison. Understood? Yes, Your Highness. We obey, the two men replied in unison. Suicide by poison? Your Highness has certainly found a convenient excuse for Isabella Grant's death. Emily Carter's voice turned icy once they were alone in the storehouse. The dead cannot be brought back, so the manner of death is irrelevant, James Sinclair said, his eyes devoid of emotion, as if Isabella Grant were a stranger. Aren't you afraid Isabella Grant will seek justice from you in the afterlife? Emily Carter mocked. Emily Carter, a physician, abhorred those who treated lives as carelessly as weeds, yet she saw that very disregard in James Sinclair's countenance. James Sinclair scoffed coldly, ghost stories are mere nonsense. Conversely, there are those who delight in feigning the supernatural. His gaze lingered on Emily Carter, laden with insinuation. If Your Highness disbelieves in ghosts, then believe my words. I've proven my innocence in Isabella Grant's death. Will Your Highness now fulfill his promise? Emily Carter knew she hadn't poisoned Isabella Grant. If she had truly wished her dead, there were countless undetectable methods at her disposal. Woman, you seem to forget our wager hinged on Isabella Grant's death being unrelated to you. You've only proven she died of fright, not that her fear wasn't your doing. Emily Carter, incensed by James Sinclair's sophistry, retorted, Your Highness's shamelessness reaches new heights. I'm truly impressed. James Sinclair smiled serenely. I merely remind you with facts to choose your words with care. A little humility wouldn't go amiss. Emily Carter replied icily, I thank Your Highness for the reminder. Perhaps Your Highness should also heed these words, setting an example for the manner. With that, Emily Carter turned to leave the blood-soaked storeroom. But as she took a step, she felt that familiar yet distant gaze upon her. Emily Carter returned quietly to Thowley Courtyard. It seemed her observer had only seen her off from the storeroom, not followed her. Mia Hayes, anxiously awaiting her return, rushed forward the moment Emily Carter appeared. Clutching her hand, she exclaimed, Miss, you're safe. I was going to search for you, but someone stopped me from leaving Thowley Courtyard. I couldn't be by your side. Mia Hayes, I've just returned. Let me rest a while before you tell me everything, all right? Emily Carter raised an eyebrow. Mia Hayes's fretting stemmed from their shared history of being bullied, a habit unlikely to change quickly. Miss. Mia Hayes grumbled discontentedly. She'd noticed a marked increase in being brushed aside since Emily Carter's suicide attempt. But then, a thought struck Emily Carter. She could use Mia Hayes's tendency to chatter to uncover certain truths. A wave of unease swept through Duke Oliver's manor after Isabella Grant's death. Though ruled a suicide by poison, the incident, coupled with Amelia Carter's seizures, convinced many servants that Isabella Grant's vengeful spirit lingered, seeking to torment them. Aware of these rumors, Emily Carter deliberately let Mia Hayes spread word that the seventh midnight after death was when Isabella Grant's soul would return. If she had unfinished business, she might seek help from the living. The next 6 days passed in utter tranquility. After the mud-eating incident, Amelia Carter was sent back to the Ministry of Works by James Sinclair, with no further mention of betrothal. Moreover, the number of ladies within the manor had increased in recent days, a change not without its implications. But these things, as far as Emily Carter was concerned, were irrelevant to her. The only thing she cared about was the audacious individual who dared to simultaneously spy on her and Isabella Grant. Sure enough, just past the hour of the rat, the watchful Emily Carter saw a dark figure sneak into the warehouse. Emily Carter didn't follow into the warehouse. She stood outside, poking a small hole in the door, the situation inside clearly visible. What somewhat surprised Emily Carter was that the person standing next to the coffin was a petite, pretty little girl, looking about Mia Hayes' age. Most importantly, she had seen this girl beside Isabella Grant before, but she never imagined this girl harbored such deep resentment towards her. The next day, the little girl who had previously cursed incessantly beside Isabella Grant's memorial tablet was invited by Emily Carter to Thowley Courtyard. In the empty room, there were only the two of them. The silent atmosphere caused a chill to rise from the depths of Alex Rivers' heart, making it even harder to guess the intentions of the woman before her. Emily Carter tapped her fingers lightly on the table, rhythmically letting the seconds and minutes tick by. A long while later, she slowly opened her mouth. "Some time ago, you were the one sneaking around, spying on me and Isabella Grant, weren't you?" Alex Rivers had guessed that Emily Carter would discover this, but her directness caught her off guard, leaving her momentarily unable to formulate a rebuttal. "Since you've been up to no good behind my back, shouldn't you introduce yourself properly? Wouldn't it be too impolite otherwise?" A smile played on Emily Carter's lips, but a chilling glint in her eyes sent shivers down one's spine. Alex Rivers didn't know Emily Carter's purpose. She had thought she was meticulous, yet her flaws were discovered, and with such certainty. "Relax, I don't intend to do anything to you for now. But if you try anything in front of me, I won't be inclined to let you leave this room, and even if you do, you won't live much longer." "What do you mean?" A nameless fear rose in Alex Rivers' heart. While spying on them, Alex Rivers had realized that Emily Carter was far more intelligent than that vicious woman, Isabella Grant. But after Isabella Grant's death, everything had been peaceful, making her completely forget Emily Carter's sharpness. "Nothing much, just a precaution. I've added a little something to this room. Colorless, odorless, but quite suitable for self-defense." Emily Carter's tone was as casual as if discussing the pleasant weather. "You poison me?" Before Emily Carter spoke, Alex Rivers hadn't even considered this possibility. How could she have possibly guarded against it? "Indeed. If you don't believe me, you can check if a black line has appeared on your palm." Emily Carter offered a helpful reminder. "Rest assured, if I wanted you dead, I would naturally let you die openly, not like Isabella Grant, who died without even knowing her promiscuity was merely a setup." With Emily Carter's medical skills, she could easily discern what illness Isabella Grant had suffered from. But later, she felt something was amiss. It wasn't that she believed Isabella Grant was chaste, but rather that Isabella Grant should have known that James Sinclair would absolutely not tolerate any betrayal. Therefore, Emily Carter believed Isabella Grant wouldn't have dared. Chapter 23, Subduing Alex Rivers. Thus, Emily Carter, while Isabella Grant's body lay unburied, went to the warehouse to examine it. Though not a physician, Emily Carter, recognizing similar pathologies, discovered upon examination that Isabella Grant's uncleanliness was deliberately induced. The situation became deadlocked, but Emily Carter, patient and unconstrained by time, watched her opponent fall into the trap she'd laid, hope dwindling until she begged for mercy. Alex Rivers's psychological resilience paled in comparison to Emily Carter's. Her cunning was transparent, even self-destructive, before Emily Carter's discerning gaze. "I'll tell you anything you want to know," Alex Rivers finally conceded, precisely as Emily Carter had anticipated. "Then tell me about your feud with Isabella Grant. Why do you hate her so much?" Emily Carter hadn't forgotten that night. Alex Rivers hadn't snuck into the warehouse out of remorse for the supposedly returning spirit of Isabella Grant, but rather to desecrate her corpse. Death by poison was too merciful for Isabella Grant. Alex Rivers's eyes filled with sorrow, recalling a painful memory. "When I was very young," she began slowly, "my father died. My mother raised me alone, teaching me to read and write, and even martial arts for self-defense. I never questioned why an ordinary woman knew so much until one day, a group of men came to our house. My mother hurriedly locked me in the wardrobe, facing those fierce officers alone. Emily Carter could surmise the ensuing events without Alex Rivers needing to elaborate. After the officers left, I struggled out of the wardrobe only to find my mother lying in a pool of blood, lifeless. 3 years had passed, but the image remained vivid, Alex Rivers clutching her mother's still warm body, her cries unanswered. Alex Rivers buried her mother on a nearby mountain where they often enjoyed the scenery and sometimes foraged for food. Alex Rivers gradually accepted her mother's death until, 6 months prior, she saw Isabella Grant on the street. Alex Rivers became agitated. Do you know? That wicked woman was brazenly wearing that white jade hairpin. I recognized it instantly as my mother's. After much inquiry, I learned she was the Grant's daughter, the secondary wife of Prince Yi. So, I schemed my way into the manor as a maid, enduring humiliation to gain Isabella Grant's favor, eventually becoming her personal servant. Alex Rivers loathed herself during that time, but to uncover the truth about her mother's death, she willingly became Isabella Grant's lackey. Isabella Grant finally began to trust me, so I asked about the hairpin. She claimed it was hers, but I knew it was my mother's heirloom. After I could remember, she always said it would be my dowry. Isabella Grant likely never imagined that something so ordinary for her would lead to such a deadly predicament. Isabella Grant's words weren't trustworthy, so I learned the whole truth from her personal maid. It turns out that while strolling through the market, Isabella Grant took a liking to my mother's stall. She was initially interested in the trinkets, but then her attention was caught by the white jade hairpin my mother wore. She offered a high price for it, but my mother refused. As a result, Isabella Grant feigned understanding, but then sent soldiers to our home to steal it, ultimately killing my mother. How could I not avenge this? Having heard the whole story, Emily Carter found it didn't deviate much from her initial suspicions. Avenging your mother is understandable, but why frame me to achieve your goal? Emily Carter asked coldly. Alex Rivers had been with the Grants for at least several months, during which time there should have been opportunities to act. Yet, she chose the moment Isabella Grant came to her, clearly intending to shift the blame. I did intend to frame you. Alex Rivers answered frankly. Now that her mother was avenged, her own fate was inconsequential, so she spoke truthfully. I felt only you could overthrow Isabella Grant, so I didn't hesitate to use you to achieve my purpose. In truth, if Isabella Grant hadn't stormed back one day, Alex Rivers wouldn't have known about Emily Carter. Perhaps she'd heard the name but hadn't paid attention. It wasn't until Isabella Grant repeatedly failed to gain any advantage against Emily Carter that Alex Rivers became certain that having Emily Carter in her revenge plan might double its effectiveness. Indeed, the reality wasn't far from her expectations. You certainly think highly of me. Even I didn't know I was so useful. The feeling of being used wasn't pleasant, but Emily Carter felt a certain admiration for Alex Rivers. I've said all I need to say. Even if you want to know more, I can't help you. So, can I leave now? Don't forget you're poisoned. Do you not want to live? Avenging my mother was my life's greatest wish. Now that it's fulfilled, living or dying makes no difference. Compared to when she first entered, Alex Rivers felt a sense of peace. Moreover, since being discovered by Emily Carter, she hadn't held on to any hope of survival. Since you desire death so much, why not give your life to me? Emily Carter's words sounded like a death sentence, but her expression didn't match. As you wish. If you want it, take it. Alex Rivers resignedly replied. After all, I truly caused you trouble, dragging you into my revenge. Emily Carter shook her head, a playful glint in her eyes as she looked at Alex Rivers. I think you misunderstand. I don't want to kill you, but rather, I hope you can become my right hand. Emily Carter considered her limited resources. Besides Mia Hayes, she had no other confidants. While Mia Hayes managed her daily life well, her gentle nature prevented her from handling more demanding tasks. Thus, Emily Carter needed a more capable assistant. Alex Rivers gaped, utterly astonished by Emily Carter's proposal. She clearly thought her death was certain, yet at this moment, could it be that fate hadn't yet decided to take her life? I can give you time to think. Regardless of your final decision, I won't harm you. Emily Carter saw the resilience and strength in Alex Rivers. In this land where men are valued above women, finding someone like her was a stroke of luck for Emily Carter. Are you serious? Alex Rivers still couldn't believe Emily's words. How could such good fortune befall her? Among the servants, rumors had already spread that Emily was the best mistress in Duke Oliver's manor. Not only was she not arrogant, but she also shared good things with her servants. Mia Hayes, who used to be pale and thin, was now becoming plump, her face rosy, clearly living better than most of the other maids in Duke Oliver's manor. Moreover, looking at recent events, it wasn't hard to see that the Wangye was starting to value Emily. Following a favored mistress would certainly be much more comfortable than tending fires in the kitchen or sweeping the gardens. I have no reason to deceive you. You possess something I need, but I must warn you, I cannot tolerate any betrayal. If you agree, then be content with your duties. Don't let me catch you doing anything against me, otherwise, your end will be even more miserable than Isabella Grant's. Emily said coldly. It was always advantageous to speak harsh words up front, lest anyone misunderstand and think she was easy to bully. However, lately, those who caused trouble for her had rapidly decreased, while flattery increased. Even Mia Hayes had become the target of some people's fawning. It was a pity that Thowley Courtyard truly had no place for such opportunistic individuals. Hearing Emily say this, Alex Rivers almost without thinking knelt down and sincerely replied, "This servant is willing to be Mrs. Loyal Hand, absolutely without any second thoughts." Alex Rivers respectfully replied. She believed she wouldn't regret this momentous decision. As time went on, she felt even more fortunate to have chosen the right mistress. Following Emily, she had witnessed many things. Emily truly brought her so many surprises. In that case, I hope our cooperation will be pleasant. Emily extended her hand. To say she viewed Alex Rivers as a servant was less accurate than to say she saw her as a potential partner. Alex Rivers didn't understand why Emily extended her hand, but instinctively, she grasped it tightly. The warmth from Emily's palm made her feel as if she had been given a second chance at life. Relieved of the burden of avenging her mother, the radiant expression on Alex Rivers' face further confirmed to Emily that this was the right decision. Chapter 24, Unexpected Incident. The next day, Emily was in her room researching new medicines when she suddenly heard a commotion outside. Within seconds, her door was burst open, and a noisy group demanded a search. No one in Duke Oliver's manor was spared. Seeing this, Alex Rivers, quick as an arrow, shielded Emily, appearing ready to risk her life against them. Emily felt a warmth in her heart and patted Alex Rivers' shoulder, signaling that she needn't be so tense. "I can walk myself. You don't need to brandish your weapons so theatrically in front of me," Emily said coldly, her aura easily overpowering these insignificant shrimp. Emily slowly walked out of Thowley Court, a faint smile perpetually gracing her face, looking nothing like a prisoner. Conversely, the other members of the Duke's manor, some wailing tragically, others scurrying like ants on a hot pan, the entire household in utter chaos. Emily frowned, looking around but not seeing James Sinclair, yet unexpectedly spotting a familiar face, Henry Blake. Why was he here? A gentle voice, smooth as jade, reached Emily's ears. "I never expected our second encounter to be under such circumstances." A hint of regret laced his tone. This was only their second meeting, yet Henry Blake's intimate tone gave the misleading impression of long-lost friends reunited, causing many in the Duke's manor to glance their way. Emily Carter replied calmly, "General Lamb bringing so many soldiers to the Duke's manor, surely it's not for a casual chat." Emily Carter did have a favorable impression of Henry Blake, but it was unclear whether he was friend or foe, and she naturally didn't want to become a target of public criticism. Henry Blake seemed not to notice the distance in Emily Carter's words, still smiling as he said, "I accepted this arduous task truly because I wanted to see you again." That day at the market, Emily Carter had left a deep impression on Henry Blake. He had never met such an interesting woman, only regretting that she was already married. Emily Carter silently assessed Henry Blake. This man seemed completely unconcerned by the chaotic state of the Duke's manor, maintaining a composed and relaxed demeanor. If that's the case, could General Lamb be more specific? Emily Carter smiled faintly, a subtle glint in her eyes. They moved to the side, and before Emily Carter could ask, Henry Blake took the initiative to explain, "Duke Oliver is accused of plotting against the Emperor, with clear evidence. He has been apprehended by the Imperial Guard and imprisoned." The more Emily Carter heard, the stranger it seemed. James Sinclair, despite his flaws, would absolutely not plot against the Emperor. Otherwise, he wouldn't have tirelessly sought doctors and remedies for the Emperor's illness before. Was it the Emperor's direct order to exterminate Duke Oliver's manor, leaving no one alive? No, the Emperor is in a coma. It was the Empress's decree. Henry Blake answered honestly. So, did James Sinclair confess to plotting against the Emperor? Emily Carter couldn't connect James Sinclair to this. He was a scoundrel, but surely a patriotic one. Emily Carter fell into deep thought. Henry Blake, assuming she was contemplating escape, was about to speak when she suddenly said, "I want to see the Emperor, to personally treat him." Emily Carter spoke resolutely. She couldn't accept such a cruel punishment as extermination, even if those in the Duke's manor were unrelated to her. She couldn't stand by and watch them die. Henry Blake had indeed witnessed Emily Carter's medical skills, but treating the Emperor seemed far-fetched. Not to mention her lack of access to the Emperor, even if she did, if her methods failed, it could implicate the Ministry of Justice. Henry Blake didn't voice his thoughts, feigning agreement with Emily Carter's proposal, "I will take you to the palace, but think carefully. If you do this, there's no turning back. If you give up now, I can still let you leave. Even if I were lucky enough to survive, the 2 maids accompanying me wouldn't escape death. Therefore, I might as well gamble and see what my luck truly holds." Emily Carter had her own plans, as did Henry Blake. He quietly instructed the coachman to head towards the outskirts, wanting Emily Carter to leave this chaotic place entirely. Emily Carter vaguely remembered this wasn't the road to the palace. In this critical moment, she jumped from the carriage, rolling twice on the ground to lessen the impact, an action entirely unlike what a woman should do. Henry Blake also immediately jumped from the carriage. Seeing Emily Carter's disheveled appearance, his slight anger completely dissipated. "What are you doing? Don't you know jumping from a moving carriage is dangerous?" Henry Blake's reprimand was laced with concern, unlike James Sinclair's constant sarcasm and mockery, which always made her feel like lifelong enemies were nothing more than that. "If General Lamb had kept his promise, I wouldn't have resorted to this." Emily Carter brushed off the dirt from her clothes. As a battlefield physician, if she didn't have any injuries, she'd be embarrassed to tell others she was healing and saving lives on the battlefield. So, the previous action was a small matter for Emily Carter. "I only wanted the best for you, didn't want you involved in this mess, but unexpectedly, it turned into something bad." Henry Blake shrugged, speaking nonchalantly, but Emily Carter vaguely sensed a murderous aura expanding from him. "I have my own plans for this. If General Lamb doesn't intend to help me, at least don't hinder me." Emily Carter spoke coldly, then turned to leave. Henry Blake tightly gripped Emily Carter's wrist, the force strong as if to compel her to leave. Emily Carter frowned slightly, saying with some displeasure, "General Lamb, are you not aware of the principle of men and women not touching? Moreover, I am a married woman. Pulling and tugging like this in public is not appropriate." Hearing this, Henry Blake released Emily Carter's wrist, looking at her somewhat sheepishly. "I was abrupt just now, but I truly don't agree with you entering the Imperial Palace." You should still reconsider. General Lamb, the longer I consider, the more precarious the lives of everyone in Duke Oliver's manor become. Therefore, I sincerely implore you to take me to the Imperial Palace. I want to treat His Majesty. Henry Blake, seeing Emily Carter unmoved, had to compromise and follow her plan. But unexpectedly, at this moment, a figure suddenly rushed out from the crowd, kneeling with a thud at Emily Carter's feet. Miss, please save me. Emily Carter looked down closely for a moment, then remembered this man was the quack doctor from Bright Healing Clinic, and also the one with unclean hands. Emily Carter glanced at him coldly, not intending to pay him any attention, but the crowd looking their way grew larger and larger, with some people pointing and whispering. Henry Blake didn't want to cause a scene, but looking at the situation, if this unreasonable man didn't get what he wanted, he would likely continue to pester them. How about this, we find a place to talk clearly and see what help you need. How does that sound? Henry Blake slowly spoke, a harmless smile on his face, but seemingly containing a hint of threat. Lucas Coleman hastily nodded, please follow me this way. He also realized his emotions were overly agitated, but he had finally met Emily Carter, how could he let this opportunity slip by? Hold on. It seems you've all made a decision for me without my consent. Emily Carter stood still, speaking calmly. Hearing this, Lucas Coleman immediately spoke urgently, Miss, if you can reattach these arms for me, I can fulfill any request you have. That day, Lucas Coleman's 2 arms were ruthlessly crippled by Emily Carter. Although unwilling, his skills were inferior, and he could only accept his fate. But unexpectedly, no matter what method he used, he couldn't reattach his arms, they just hung limply at his sides. Lucas Coleman himself was a famous physician in the city, yet he couldn't heal himself. Helpless, he had to send for other physicians for treatment, but unexpectedly, none of them could do it. At his wit's end, Lucas Coleman suddenly remembered that the woman who crippled his arms was from Duke Oliver's manor. But even if he had 100 lives, he wouldn't dare go to Duke Oliver's manor to demand her presence. So, until today, he remained a cripple. But fate had not entirely abandoned him, allowing him to encounter Emily Carter at this moment. However, Emily Carter's words were like a bucket of cold water, drenching him from head to toe, extinguishing the flickering flame of hope. You committed shady deeds that couldn't be brought to light. I merely acted on behalf of heaven to cripple your arms. Moreover, you couldn't bear it after just a few days. What about those whose lives you ruined for half their lifetime? Who can they turn to for justice? Emily's eyes grew cold, each accusatory word turning Lucas Coleman's face ashen. Henry Blake, standing beside her, listened. Although he didn't know the specifics of what happened, Emily, who even helped strangers, was certainly not heartless. Lucas Coleman must have done something heinous. Miss, I know I was wrong. Since that day, I haven't done those things anymore. Moreover, I've tried my best to compensate them. So, could you, miss, considering these things, have mercy and help me reattach my arms? A large man with tears in his eyes truly looked pitiful, but Emily was certainly not among those who felt sorry for him. You speak well, but if after you recover, you go back to doing things that violate ethics and morality, wouldn't I be aiding and abetting evil? A leopard cannot change its spots. Emily didn't want to help others make a wedding dress for no reason, so she stared at Lucas Coleman and slowly said, how about we make a deal? Chapter 25, Meeting in Prison. Lucas Coleman didn't hesitate to nod in agreement. All right, as long as you're willing to save me, I'll agree to any condition. He looked as if he couldn't wait to worship Emily as a bodhisattva. If that's the case, we can certainly sit down and talk things through. Emily was very satisfied with Lucas Coleman's compliance. But Emily's image in Henry Blake's eyes suddenly transformed from the resilience of a plum blossom to the cunning of a merchant. However, he was very curious about what this woman was really thinking. The group arrived at Bright Healing Clinic. Emily noticed that the business here was a world of difference compared to that day. If it could be described as bustling with people coming and going before, now it could only be described as desolate and deserted. Lucas Coleman seemed to see through Emily's thoughts, letting out a wry, self-deprecating laugh. Look at me now. I can't even perform the most basic medical examinations. Of course, no patient would seek me out for treatment. Lucas Coleman knew he had done many wrong things in the past, but his initial intention as a physician was to heal and save people. It was a pity that he lost his way and ended up like this. Where's that quack sign I told you to hang? If you haven't fulfilled our previous agreement, how can I be sure you won't go back on your word this time? Emily snorted coldly, seemingly still holding a grudge against Lucas Coleman for his past actions. With this kind of person, only a harsh lesson will make him remember what he should and shouldn't do. Feigning pity in front of Emily was useless. Lucas Coleman's face flushed slightly. He then ordered someone to bring out a wooden board, on which were indeed carved the 4 characters, "I am a quack." He had been too ashamed to hang it up. Emily chuckled softly. "I want you to hang this sign while you practice medicine. How long you hang it depends on your own performance." Lucas Coleman gritted his teeth, finally relenting with a hint of unwillingness. "Fine, I'll do it. Next, I need to take some medicinal herbs from this bright healing clinic." "No problem, you can have any herbs you want, Mississippi." Lucas Coleman readily agreed to this, forgetting that Emily was a physician herself. She selected only the most precious and top-grade herbs from Bright Healing Clinic, some of which were even priceless. Even the clinic's treasured possessions couldn't escape Emily's grasp. Henry Blake seemed surprised by Emily's substantial appetite. The 2 baskets of herbs before him were likely worth nearly the entire fortune of Bright Healing Clinic. "Does it pain you so much?" Emily Carter raised an eyebrow. The pained expression on Lucas Coleman's face was all too evident. Lucas Coleman quickly shook his head. He had ways to recover these herbs, but his arm only had this one chance to heal. Emily Carter took out a small jade bottle from her sleeve, poured out a pill, and handed it to Lucas Coleman. "Take it." "This." Lucas Coleman hesitated for a moment, then accepted the pill from Emily Carter, but still hesitated to put it in his mouth. "Don't worry, it's not poison, at least not yet. As long as you obediently treat and save people, it will never become poison. On the contrary, you might soon witness its true effects." Emily Carter paused, then continued, "Whether you take it or not is your decision. Consider it carefully." Emily Carter gave Lucas Coleman the absolute right to choose, but he knew he had no choice. With or without this poison pill in his body, Emily Carter could take his life at any time. Since that incident, especially after he sought medical treatment in vain, his fear of Emily Carter had unknowingly seeped deep into his bones. Lucas Coleman tossed the pill into his mouth with the look of a martyr, closing his eyes for a long time, afraid to open them. "You've met all my demands. Now I'll set your bones. It might hurt a bit, so bear with it." As Emily Carter spoke, she grasped Lucas Coleman's limp arms, swiftly applying pressure to several acupuncture points with blinding speed. A final click sounded, like a key turning in the right lock, and with 3 quick movements, she restored his arms to their proper positions. Before Lucas Coleman could react to what Emily Carter had done, he felt sensation return to his arm. He incredulously flexed it, finally able to move it as before. Lucas Coleman knelt before Emily Carter once more, this time with tears welling in his eyes, overflowing with gratitude. Thank you, miss, for saving my life. If you have any commands for Lucas Coleman in the future, please do not hesitate to ask. I will go through fire and water, I will not refuse. A man's knees are made of gold, it's best not to kneel so readily. Besides, this was just a fair exchange, you needn't be so dramatic. For Emily Carter, bone setting was truly a small matter. The other physicians failed because they didn't understand the human pressure points and joints, and lacked confidence in their own skills. Henry Blake, who had been watching the entire process, couldn't help but admit that Emily Carter truly possessed exceptional skills. So her claim of wanting to enter the palace to treat the emperor was likely not just empty talk. "Are you truly confident you can cure the emperor's illness?" Henry Blake suddenly asked. If the imperial physicians hadn't been completely stumped, he wouldn't need to grasp at straws. Emily Carter's lips curved slightly. "As a physician, the greatest taboo is lying and boasting. I haven't even seen the emperor once, how can I guarantee a cure? But I suspect the emperor's life is in grave danger. Trying something new at this point might yield unexpected results. It just depends on whether General Lamb is willing to take this gamble." Henry Blake saw the pride and determination in Emily Carter's eyes and felt inexplicably convinced by her words. "In that case, I'm willing to take this gamble with you." "I believe you won't disappoint me," Henry Blake said sincerely. Emily Carter and Henry Blake exchanged smiles, each finding the answer they sought in the other's eyes. Imperial Palace security is tight right now. The only way in is for you to disguise yourself as a eunuch. That way, it won't arouse too much suspicion. Henry Blake's gentle voice was like the still surface of a calm lake, unconsciously soothing the heart. Coupled with his handsome features and extraordinary demeanor, it was understandable why so many women were infatuated with him. Emily Carter didn't mind disguising herself as a eunuch. As long as she could determine the cause of the emperor's illness, everything else would be much easier. "From now on, sister, you must observe my expressions and act accordingly. The palace is not like Duke Oliver's manor. A single misstep could cost you your head, and even I might not be able to protect you then," Henry Blake warned earnestly. This was one of the reasons he was hesitant to bring Emily Carter into the palace. The carriage slowly approached the palace gates. Just as they disembarked and prepared to enter, a man approached. At first glance, Emily Carter thought James Sinclair had been released. "Who is he?" Emily Carter asked, slightly puzzled. The man's appearance bore at least a 7/10 resemblance to James Sinclair, but the aura around him was completely different. If James Sinclair was a lone wolf lying in wait, this man was a cunning, scheming fox. "He is the current 6th Prince, Ethan Sinclair, and Prince Sinclair's younger brother by the same mother," Henry Blake explained calmly. The brotherly affection between these two was so profound that practically no one in Heaven's Ascend Kingdom was unaware of it. That's why Henry Blake found it strange that Ethan Sinclair had no reaction to James Sinclair's attempted assassination of the Emperor, neither openly nor privately, as if he was completely oblivious. "Henry Blake, when did you acquire such a young eunuch attendant?" Ethan Sinclair approached them, his jade-like face, star-bright eyes, and elegant demeanor radiating a carefree and dashing aura, the very image of a charming nobleman. Henry Blake pulled Ethan Sinclair aside and said mysteriously, "This is a wandering physician I spent a great deal of effort to find. Perhaps they can prove James' innocence." "Really? Where did you find this wandering physician, brother? Are they trustworthy?" Upon hearing that someone could potentially clear James Sinclair's name, Ethan Sinclair's large, bright eyes lit up like a 100-watt bulb. Emily Carter genuinely wanted to get to the bottom of the matter, but that didn't mean she wanted to be labeled a wandering physician. She was a professional, after all. Why did it sound like Henry Blake was referring to a street-side fortune teller charging a few silver coins? Ethan Sinclair assessed Emily Carter from head to toe, noting the wandering physician's clear eyes and youthful appearance, completely unaware that she was one of his third sister-in-law's incarnations. "Of course they are trustworthy, but we still need James to agree to this plan first." Henry Blake's tone was very much like he was coaxing a child, and Ethan Sinclair took the bait even faster than Emily Carter had anticipated. "That's not a problem. I can arrange for them to meet third brother," Ethan Sinclair replied confidently. Everything was prepared, all that remained was to meet James Sinclair. Emily Carter patiently waited until nightfall. Hearing that the hour of the pig was when the heavenly prison's security was most lax, she took this opportunity to sneak into the heavenly prison with the arranged escort. Emily Carter held her breath, carefully approaching James Sinclair's cell. He stood with his back to the cell door, his tall figure elongated by the moonlight streaming through the small window, evoking an unexpected sense of loneliness in her. Hearing the movement behind him, James Sinclair slowly turned around, never expecting the person standing before him to be the woman he thought would absolutely never appear here. "Emily Carter, what are you doing here?" James Sinclair frowned, a complex glint in his eyes. Emily Carter said with a touch of amusement, "I was just curious to see what the prince looked like in captivity." "As expected, you look just as you always do, just as detestable." "What did you say?" James Sinclair sneered, stepping closer, the flicker of good mood he'd just felt completely extinguished by Emily Carter's words. Chapter 26 Poisoned, even imprisoned in this dungeon, your highness still exudes a regal aura. Truly admirable. Emily Carter spoke calmly. It seemed James Sinclair's prison life wasn't so bad, even his blankets were no different from those in the royal palace. "Seeing me in this reduced state seems to bring you great joy." James Sinclair leaned close to Emily Carter's ear, his warm breath tickling her, causing a slight itch. Emily Carter pushed James Sinclair away. "Your Highness had best keep your distance. If others see us like this, I fear they'll spread rumors about your Highness's preferences." With that said, Emily Carter glanced at James Sinclair meaningfully, as if questioning whether he truly had such a preference. James Sinclair's eyes narrowed slightly, a dangerous glint flashing within them. This woman always had a knack for provoking him. "If you've only come to mock me, you can leave now," James Sinclair said coldly, deliberately ignoring the unfamiliar feeling in his heart. "I truly want to leave, but the entire Duke Oliver's manor is accused of plotting against His Majesty, and everyone faces execution. I'm not ready for such an end," Emily Carter said, her tone unusually calm as she spoke to James Sinclair. The atmosphere between them was surprisingly amicable. James Sinclair was aware of the events unfolding at Duke Oliver's manor. He hadn't expected this woman to not only remain but also dare to come here. The so-called heavenly prison held only the most heinous criminals, especially murderers, each with at least a dozen lives on their hands. The reason for his imprisonment here was likely a veiled hope for an accident. "Then, Your Highness, can you tell me why you plotted against His Majesty?" "At least I can die with some understanding," Emily Carter said. She truly didn't believe James Sinclair would commit such an act, but if someone had framed him, who possessed such power to falsely accuse the esteemed Heap Vong of Heaven's Ascend Kingdom? "Do you think I would do such a thing?" James Sinclair had never cared about the accusations others leveled against him, but for some reason, Emily Carter's suspicion ignited a surge of anger within him. Emily Carter replied coldly, "Whether your Highness did it or not, you know the truth in your heart. But I heard General Lamb say His Majesty is currently in a coma. If he awakens, whether your Highness plotted against him might become a different matter entirely. It seems your relationship with Henry Blake is quite good." James Sinclair's expression suddenly darkened ominously, his voice laced with a chilling coldness. "Actually, I've only met General Lamb twice, but he helped me both times," Emily Carter said, completely disregarding James Sinclair's anger, even fanning the flames. Hearing this, James Sinclair pulled Emily Carter into his arms, a suggestive smirk playing on his lips. "Emily Carter, don't forget whose woman you are. If I discover you've betrayed me, you'll learn the price of provoking my wrath." Emily Carter scoffed, "Your Highness is currently in grave danger. It's hard to believe you're still concerned with such matters of romance." Ignoring Emily Carter's mockery, James Sinclair held her closer, a sudden heat coursing through him. "I suddenly have something I want to do," he murmured. Emily Carter's eyes turned icy. "Didn't your Highness say you wouldn't force me again?" "Are your words worthless?" she retorted. Emily Carter tilted her head up, meeting James Sinclair's dark, desire-filled gaze. She fought to maintain her composure, desperately suppressing the tremor in her heart as she stared directly into his eyes. James Sinclair abruptly released Emily Carter, a cryptic smile on his face. This prince doesn't enjoy forcing others. I will wait until the day you willingly offer yourself. Your Highness may enjoy waiting, but the innocent people at Duke Oliver's manor cannot wait, nor can my maid, Emily Carter said, recalling the worried looks of Mia Hayes and Alex Rivers when she left. Especially Mia Hayes, the only person in the world who cared for Emily Carter. She was someone Emily Carter could never abandon, and for her, she had to act. Do you mean to say I am inferior to those men? James Sinclair's voice carried a clear threat, his burning gaze fixed on Emily Carter. Emily Carter coldly replied, I believe all people are equal. If your Highness considers himself above others, why bother with a common woman like me? Fine, fine, fine. Speak then, what do you want? I want to cure His Majesty. Emily Carter's answer remained the same, this was the best solution she could devise at this point. James Sinclair's first reaction upon hearing this was no different from Henry Blake's, woman, you are truly daydreaming. Emily Carter tried to suppress her anger, as a physician, she hated having her medical skills questioned. Your Highness thinks I'm daydreaming, but I may very well have the key to victory. Moreover, if we don't try, how will we know if it can be done? Emily Carter, the current emperor is in a coma. Do you intend to use his body as an experiment? James Sinclair's eyes flashed with a complex light as he roared. So many physicians are helpless against His Majesty's illness, aren't they also using his body as an experiment? Emily Carter retorted without yielding. Furthermore, her only hope currently was the emperor. You are just an ordinary woman. How can I entrust His Majesty's life to your care? Ha ha ha. Emily Carter's mocking laughter echoed throughout the prison. She looked at James Sinclair with disdain. It seems your Highness only sees women as men's possessions, with 3 obediences and 4 virtues as their duty, just like the women in your manor fighting for your favor until their heads are broken. But does your Highness know, if I wanted to kill you now, it would be as easy as turning my hand? Though it might mean mutual destruction. What do you mean? James Sinclair grabbed Emily Carter by the throat and pressed her against the cold wall. Emily Carter's contemptuous gaze didn't change, and a mocking smile played on her lips. It seems your Highness values his life. If so, why not consider my words? Perhaps you could leave this wretched prison. Woman, do you think you can achieve anything with your own strength? James Sinclair released his grip on Emily Carter's throat. Just now, if he had used a little more force, her soul would have left her body before him. Does your Highness always doubt the abilities of others? It's not me who is imprisoned in this heavenly prison. Emily Carter suddenly regretted wasting her breath on James Sinclair. If she had used this time, perhaps she would have found a way to cure the Emperor. You always have your own reasoning. I admit I underestimated you. James Sinclair's gaze lingered on Emily Carter's face for a moment. He didn't know what he suddenly thought of, but his tone softened somewhat. Since the past is behind us, could your Highness clearly describe the Emperor's symptoms to me? Emily Carter's serious expression made James Sinclair feel that trusting this woman once wouldn't be a bad thing. James Sinclair recounted everything he knew about the Emperor, without omitting a single word, to Emily Carter. Emily Carter frowned, the matter seemed more complicated than she had imagined. Are you certain His Majesty's symptoms changed in this way? Emily Carter calmly asked. Indeed, do you suspect this prince of deliberately misrepresenting the information? James Sinclair raised an eyebrow, feigning annoyance. Your Highness, I merely wish to grasp the patient's condition accurately. If possible, I hope to personally examine His Majesty. Emily Carter harbored suspicions, but confirmation demanded more evidence. Do you already know what ails His Majesty? I suspect His Majesty has been poisoned. Poisoned? Several individuals flashed through James Sinclair's mind. If poisoning were the case, it undoubtedly involved one or more of them. If it's poison, why haven't the numerous physicians detected it before? James Sinclair looked at Emily Carter, requiring a reasonable explanation. Quite simple. His Majesty was indeed ill, but the symptoms changed. Someone near him must have administered the poison. Emily Carter calmly analyzed. To say someone targeted the Emperor was to say someone targeted James Sinclair himself. Do you have a method to counteract the poison? Your Highness, I'm no miracle worker who can revive the dead with a wave of my hand. I can only strive to save him. Judging by the symptoms James Sinclair described, the poison had nearly permeated the vital organs. Whether a cure existed wasn't solely a matter of medical skill, but perhaps also of luck and miracles. Understanding Emily Carter's implication, James Sinclair said, I will arrange for you to enter the palace for an audience. Your Highness should act swiftly, lest the entire Duke Oliver's manor be buried with you. Emily Carter spoke coldly. James Sinclair gestured behind Emily Carter. Alexander Shaw will guide you. Emily Carter turned to see the man standing behind her. When did he arrive? She hadn't noticed. Remember, caution above all else. James Sinclair spoke seriously. As their eyes met, Emily Carter felt her heart skip a beat. Does your Highness fear I'll hasten your brother's demise? Emily Carter smirked coldly, as if the previous moment of vulnerability were an illusion. That depends on whether you possess such skill. Then prepare to witness it, your Highness. Emily Carter spoke confidently, the brilliance in her eyes giving James Sinclair the feeling that this was the true Emily Carter. James Sinclair watched Emily Carter's departing figure with a complex expression. Heavenly Prison quickly returned to its former stillness. ### Chapter 27 Conspiracy. Emily Carter silently followed Alexander Shaw, still disguised as a eunuch, appearing utterly unremarkable within the vast imperial palace. That is His Majesty's bedchamber. The monotonous voice reached Emily Carter's ears. Emily Carter followed Alexander Shaw's pointed finger to a magnificent palace, heavily guarded. Not even a fly could penetrate its defenses. The changing of the guard is in a quarter of an hour. You can only slip in then. Alexander Shaw handed Emily Carter a guard's uniform. Wear this. It will be easier. Emily Carter changed clothes. As the time for the changing of the guard approached, with Alexander Shaw's aid, she finally entered the Emperor's bedchamber without incident. The bedchamber was deathly silent, so still that the drop of a pin could seemingly be heard. Emily Carter cautiously entered, the pungent smell of medicine assaulting her nose. Through the curtain, she could vaguely discern a figure lying on the dragon bed, but before she could lift it for a clearer view of the Emperor, she heard footsteps outside. Emily Carter hastily sought a hiding place. She heard the main door swing open, followed by approaching footsteps nearing the dragon bed. Unexpectedly, the old man's life is so tenacious. He's gravely ill, yet still clings to life, forcing me to send someone to poison him. Sister, I've told you, no matter what happens, you must remain calm. One cannot achieve great things if one cannot tolerate small inconveniences. I've endured for years. During that time, this old man has tried more than once to pass the throne to James Sinclair. The Emperor's seat should belong to Linner. How can it fall into another's hands? The woman's voice grew shrill, her tone laced with unrestrained agitation. Sister, now that the Emperor is gone and James Sinclair is imprisoned in Heavenly Prison, our plan is nearing fruition. The man's tone was smug, devoid of remorse. Emily Carter overheard their entire conversation. Within the palace, the one who self-proclaimed this palace and coveted the throne could be none other than the Empress. And the Empress's brother was, naturally, the current royal uncle. Emily Carter hadn't anticipated this trip would unravel the entire conspiracy. To secure the throne for her son, the Empress had resorted to poisoning the Emperor. The Emperor, however, hadn't died but fallen into a coma. Thus, they concocted a plan to frame James Sinclair. This place was not safe. That was Emily Carter's sole thought. But the Emperor's bedchamber was heavily guarded, and her escape attempt alerted them. Unfamiliar with the Imperial Palace layout, Emily Carter relied on instinct, fortunate for the pitch-black darkness that cloaked everyone. Emily Carter ran with all her might, finally shaking off her pursuers. But if she didn't escape the Imperial Palace soon, capture was inevitable. As Emily Carter pondered her escape, she saw someone approaching with a torch, nearing her hiding spot. Suddenly, the torchbearer collapsed, a masked figure in black appearing behind them. The masked figure pulled Emily Carter away. Before she could react, the guards renewed their pursuit. Emily Carter had only one choice, to follow her rescuer. The masked figure seemed intimately familiar with the Imperial Palace. After several turns, the pursuing guards were left far behind, their footsteps fading into silence. Emily Carter gasped for breath, her heart pounding, her face flushed from exertion. A while later, Emily Carter realized they had reached a secluded, dilapidated palace. The tiles had lost their original color, the palace doors hung precariously ajar. Each gust of cold wind produced a creaking sound, amplifying the eerie atmosphere. "Where is this place?" Emily Carter asked, her question obviously directed at the black-clad figure who had just saved her life. "Frost Palace." The other person seemed to deliberately lower their voice, but it only further solidified Emily Carter's suspicions. "Why conceal your identity, Your Highness? Does the esteemed third Prince of Heaven's Ascend Kingdom have something to hide?" Emily Carter asked coldly, a mocking smirk playing on her lips. Seeing that Emily Carter had recognized him, James Sinclair simply removed his mask, revealing the face that Emily Carter utterly loathed. "It seems Heavenly Prison couldn't hold Your Highness after all." Emily Carter's voice held a hint of uncontrolled anger. The experience of being toyed with like this was truly pathetically rare. "Heavenly Prison indeed could not hold me, but I needed a reason to leave." James Sinclair, oblivious to Emily Carter's unusual emotions, spoke seriously. "Your Highness is truly adept at finding excuses. So, your composed demeanor stems from knowing you'd be fine. But even so, could you not care about the lives of others?" Emily Carter clenched her fists so tightly that her nails dug into her skin without her realizing it. "Do you think I enjoy treating human lives like grass?" "That's hard to say. In Your Highness's eyes, I doubt many lives hold much value. What does the life or death of others matter to you?" Emily Carter raised an eyebrow. She hated the feeling of being manipulated, yet she had jumped into this trap herself. James Sinclair's gaze hardened. In response to Emily Carter's pressing, he said, "Woman, know your place." Emily Carter scoffed. "Your Highness's scheme is quite clever. You must have foreseen this, haven't you?" James Sinclair remained silent, which Emily Carter took as a tacit admission. "Then I'm sure Your Highness has your own plans. I won't disturb your next move." Emily Carter finally allowed her emotions to settle, though her coldness intensified. "Emily Carter, do not test my limits. The consequences are beyond what you can bear." James Sinclair, inexplicably irritated, snapped at Emily Carter, his anger quickly overcoming his reason. Emily Carter, unyielding, stared directly at James Sinclair. "Your Highness is truly only skilled at using power to bully others, but with your status, you really should." Before Emily Carter could finish, James Sinclair yanked her hard, and they rolled across the ground several times to avoid the incoming arrows. After learning that someone had overheard her conversation with the royal uncle, the Empress dispatched numerous guards to search every corner of the Imperial Palace. They discovered James Sinclair and Emily Carter confronting each other in Frost Palace. "Troubles never come singly," Emily Carter muttered self-deprecatingly. What was bound to happen had finally arrived. Guards surrounded Frost Palace, sealing it off completely. James Sinclair and Emily Carter's situation could only be described as desperate. Your Highness, it seems we must deal with these lackeys before we can continue addressing our own matters. I was thinking the same. Everyone who saw the smiles on James Sinclair and Emily Carter's faces felt a chill run down their spines. James Sinclair's movements were swift and decisive, wasting no time in dispatching his opponents with brutal efficiency. He weaved through the enemy ranks, exploiting their weaknesses and delivering fatal blows. Soon, a number of Duke Oliver's manor guards lay defeated at his feet. But Emily Carter was different. Her martial arts skills were moderately good, more than enough to deal with Amelia Carter, but facing the overwhelming numbers of the palace guards, she opted for a more unique approach. Emily Carter unleashed the fruits of her recent labors upon the attacking guards, with itching powder and laughing powder proving particularly effective. Suddenly dusted with the powders, the guards hadn't even time to react before the concoctions began to work their strange magic. James Sinclair noticed that Emily Carter's side of the fight seemed considerably more chaotic than his own. The guards, wary of her unorthodox methods, kept a cautious distance. A glint of steel caught James Sinclair's eye, a dagger, aimed directly at Emily Carter. Before his mind could process the threat, his body moved instinctively, shielding her. James Sinclair. Emily Carter stared in disbelief. Had he just taken a blow for her? Emily Carter watched as blood flowed freely from James Sinclair's back, the warmth and stickiness of it shockingly tangible as it seeped onto her. Wounded but enraged, James Sinclair fought like a cornered lion, his attacks becoming even more ferocious. The Queen's men were ultimately no match for his fury, and were completely routed. Emily Carter ripped strips of cloth from her own clothes and, approaching James Sinclair, commanded, "Take off your shirt." "What are you planning?" James Sinclair had never encountered a woman so direct, though he had long since accepted Emily Carter's unusual nature. "If your Highness doesn't want to bleed to death, you'll do as I say. Aren't you even going to thank your savior? Your Highness's self-righteous heroism, in my opinion, is utter foolishness." Emily Carter offered her blunt assessment. James Sinclair ordered, "Woman, come here and stop my bleeding." Chapter 28, tending the wound suppressing both her anger and a strange flutter in her chest, Emily Carter said coldly, "Your Highness, please remove your shirt." At her words, James Sinclair unhesitatingly shed his shirt, revealing a sculpted physique as hard and unyielding as marble. "What? Haven't you seen it before?" From an angle Emily Carter couldn't see, James Sinclair's lips curved into a sly smirk, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "I see that your Highness is indeed different from ordinary men. Most would be screaming in pain by now." As she spoke, Emily Carter poured the medicinal powder directly onto James Sinclair's wound. Hiss. A sharp intake of breath from James Sinclair confirmed her suspicions. "Woman, are you doing this on purpose?" James Sinclair radiated dangerous energy. Turning to look at Emily Carter's face in the moonlight, he found himself strangely captivated. Emily Carter chuckled softly. "Your Highness can still feel pain, which means the dagger wasn't poisoned. Besides, I doubt you want to linger here any longer than necessary." These people were clearly targeting her, but with no chance of returning to report, it wouldn't be long before a second wave came searching for them. "I'm injured and can't move easily," James Sinclair said, suddenly leaning back against Emily Carter, his head resting on her leg. "As my woman, your only task now is to take care of me. Are you asking me to wait here and die with you?" Emily Carter's eyes grew colder. If it weren't for the fact that he had saved her life, she would have grabbed the nearest weapon and plunged it into his chest. "Don't worry, I don't plan on dying here, and you don't need to rush into thinking about dying with me." Emily Carter felt like she had just heard a great joke. She couldn't help but scoff. "It seems you're quite self-absorbed. Do you think every woman in the world is enamored with you? Women all want the same things. You'll understand soon enough." James Sinclair didn't think there was anything wrong with his words, even though Emily Carter, this woman, frequently defied his expectations. James Sinclair's words reminded Emily Carter of what he had said in Heavenly Prison, that she was just an ordinary woman. She felt the anger within her reaching a boiling point. At this moment, Emily Carter radiated a furious energy that James Sinclair could sense. A dangerous glint flashed in James Sinclair's eyes. Neither of them yielded. Fortunately, Ethan Sinclair arrived just in time, but he didn't expect to see his most respected elder brother looking at the little eunuch with such tenderness. "Third brother?" Ethan Sinclair called out cautiously, somewhat reluctant to break the scene before him. James Sinclair stood up, his movements unimpeded, as if he had never been injured. But the thick scent of blood seemed to permeate the air, lingering around Emily Carter's nose. An unreadable flicker, too quick for anyone to catch, flashed in her eyes. "Ethan, you're getting slower." James Sinclair raised an eyebrow, his tone flat. Ethan Sinclair replied meekly, "Third brother, I know my mistake. I will definitely not let this happen again. But third brother, is this your lover?" Ethan Sinclair, bold as ever, pointed at Emily Carter and asked ingratiatingly. James Sinclair and Emily Carter's faces darkened simultaneously. Ethan Sinclair felt a sudden chill in the air. James Sinclair, his face still grim, replied, "She is my woman." Ethan Sinclair's eyes widened in surprise. He said, a little incredulously, "Oh. So this is sister-in-law. I've long admired your name. It's a pleasure to finally meet you." Emily Carter felt utterly speechless at James Sinclair's foolish younger brother. She said, a little helplessly, "If I remember correctly, you don't know me at all." But Ethan Sinclair didn't feel any embarrassment at being exposed. On the contrary, he said cheerfully, "Aren't we acquainted now? Besides, I rarely visit third brother's manor. I find those gossiping women too noisy. But I never expected sister-in-law to be so chivalrous, disguising herself as a eunuch to save third brother. I truly admire you." Emily Carter really wanted to know who was the noisy one. She remembered Henry Blake saying that Ethan Sinclair and James Sinclair were brothers born of the same mother, but why were they so different? "Third brother, I can't believe you married such a fine woman. Didn't you see how worried sister-in-law was for you when she and Henry Blake entered the palace?" Ethan Sinclair said excitedly, only to feel the surrounding air grow increasingly cold. This was the first time Emily Carter had seen someone with such low emotional intelligence. James Sinclair's face was about to turn as dark as the bottom of a pot, yet Ethan Sinclair remained completely oblivious. "Shut up!" James Sinclair finally roared, unable to contain himself any longer. Ethan Sinclair immediately covered his mouth with his hand, looking at James Sinclair with a wronged expression, not understanding what he had said wrong. "Ethan, did you come here just to spout this nonsense?" "Of course not. I saw the Empress dispatching quite a few people to search the palace. Something must have happened, so I came to take a look." Ethan Sinclair straightened up, like a soldier listening to his general's instructions. "The Empress has dispersed her forces to search the palace. The defenses outside the Emperor's chambers must be lax. This is our opportunity." James Sinclair calmly analyzed. "Indeed, third brother is always so clever." Ethan Sinclair, truly forgetting the pain as soon as the wound healed, instantly regained his vitality and replied. As the three left Frost Palace, the guards gave chase, but found only corpses littering the ground, with no sign of the assassins. Lap Khan Palace. Inside the palace, the Empress paced anxiously. More than half an hour had passed, but there was still no news of the assassins. If the assassins were deliberately sent by someone to probe for information, wouldn't their plans be exposed? "You need to calm down now, not panic," Michael Turner said impatiently from beside her. "Calm down? How can you tell me to calm down? Maybe someone already knows about us harming that old man. Then we'll both die." Don't worry. The poisoned man has no chance of waking up. As long as the emperor doesn't wake up, who else can trouble the empress and the crown prince? Michael Turner's words finally calmed the empress down a bit. A vicious glint flashed in her eyes. It's time to send that old man on his way. James Sinclair and the other two finally reached the emperor's chambers without incident. The emperor remained as Emily Carter had seen him before, lying still on the dragon bed, the room filled with the strong smell of medicine. Emily Carter lifted the curtain and saw an emaciated old man whose breathing was so weak it was almost imperceptible. Emily Carter took the emperor's pulse. Combined with the symptoms he was exhibiting, she confirmed her initial diagnosis. The emperor had been poisoned with a rare neurotoxin, for which there was likely no effective treatment with current medical knowledge. There were so many poisons in the world, why did the empress choose this one? Can the emperor be saved? Ethan Sinclair asked worriedly, surprised by the emperor's condition. James Sinclair saw a flicker of understanding in Emily Carter's eyes, but she still didn't speak. You have a solution, don't you? James Sinclair asked, frowning. Could your highness be more specific? Emily Carter replied calmly. If I recall correctly, you yourself said you wanted to cure the emperor. So what is the meaning of your current behavior? James Sinclair said, somewhat angrily. He was truly displeased with Emily Carter's secrecy. Your highness, I do know what poison the emperor has been afflicted with, but it's an intricate one, deeply embedded within his organs. I can only attempt to neutralize the toxins and awaken him for now. Emily Carter paused briefly, then continued, however, if you wish for me to treat the emperor, your highness must agree to one condition. Emily Carter. Have I pampered you too much to make you think you have the right to bargain with me at this juncture? James Sinclair's face darkened ominously as he seized Emily Carter's throat, pressing her against the wall. Ethan Sinclair was startled by the sudden turn of events, but he dared not intervene. Cough, cough. Emily Carter struggled to breathe, yet showed no sign of yielding. Your highness, if you don't agree to my terms, I fear the emperor may not live long enough for you to find another physician capable of treating him. James Sinclair stared at the cold smile on Emily Carter's face. For a moment, he genuinely considered killing her, but ultimately released his grip. Emily Carter slumped to the floor, her face flushed crimson. When James Sinclair had contemplated ending her life, she had felt the full force of his murderous intent. James Sinclair fixed a cold gaze upon Emily Carter. He had long recognized that she was no longer the concubine he had brought into Duke Oliver's manor years ago. Now, he was even more certain. This woman defied him time and again, never truly acknowledging his authority. So, has your highness finally changed his mind? Emily Carter didn't care about provoking him further, as long as she could escape that gilded cage. Emily Carter, I agree to your terms. If you can awaken the emperor, I will let you go. James Sinclair gritted his teeth, his fists clenched, eyes blazing with a fury that threatened to consume everything. A dangerous aura emanated from him. Thank you, your highness. Emily Carter rose, showing no fear as she faced James Sinclair. She enunciated each word, remember your promise, your highness. Hashtag Chapter 29 Treatment. James Sinclair stood off to the side, his entire being suddenly still, devoid of any discernible emotion. Seeing this, Emily Carter said nothing more, but turned to Ethan Sinclair. Sixth, your highness, could you prepare some salt and water for me? Her tone had shifted dramatically. Oh, right, I'll get it right away. Ethan Sinclair instinctively hurried out, his survival instinct screaming that remaining there was perilous. Soon, Ethan Sinclair placed the two items Emily Carter requested before her. Emily Carter poured some salt into the water and then submerged the silver needle she carried with her into the saline solution. She left it there for about an hour before retrieving it. Emily Carter removed the emperor's shirt and carefully inserted the needle into the acupoint above his heart. Black blood, emitting a foul odor, oozed from the puncture. Ethan Sinclair covered his nose with a look of disgust, but he saw Emily Carter calmly continue the acupuncture. The color of the blood gradually lightened from black, but hadn't yet returned to normal. James Sinclair also noticed this. Before he could ask, Emily Carter spoke. "Sixth Your Highness, I also require you to prepare some medicinal herbs." "What herbs?" "Paris polyphylla, toad skin, centipede, Rehmannia glutinosa." Emily Carter listed over 20 herbs. Ethan Sinclair listened, bewildered. He had never heard of at least 20 of them. "I implore you, Sixth Prince James, to procure these medicinal ingredients with haste. If His Majesty's poisoning persists, I fear even the intervention of immortals would prove futile." "No problem, I'll get right on it," Ethan Sinclair said, then ran straight out of the Emperor's bedchamber, leaving only Emily Carter and James Sinclair silently facing each other. But Emily Carter still had to speak. "I wonder if Your Highness could dispatch someone to the Empress's palace or royal uncle's manor to search for any krites?" Emily Carter said slowly, "This matter could probably only be entrusted to James Sinclair." "Krites?" "Indeed. His Majesty's affliction stems from the venom of the golden krite. Though its venom is potent, the serpent itself is docile and slow-moving. The imperial palace is not its natural habitat, thus someone must have brought it in from outside. I shall dispatch men to investigate thoroughly." James Sinclair's expression grew grave. He had heard of the golden krite's toxicity. It seemed someone feared the Emperor wasn't truly dead and resorted to this method. "I'm afraid I must also trouble Your Highness to find me temporary lodging. Currently, I am utterly destitute," Emily Carter stated matter-of-factly. "If I arrange lodging for you so readily, what if you abscond?" James Sinclair raised an eyebrow, seemingly distrustful of Emily Carter. Emily Carter chuckled softly, "With Your Highness's capabilities, even if I flee to the ends of the earth, if you are unwilling to relinquish your pursuit, I doubt I could escape." Emily Carter's words weren't mere flattery. As a physician, years of experience taught her never to underestimate any ailment, and naturally, never to underestimate any adversary. James Sinclair, however, felt no positive emotion from Emily Carter's words. He had thought he could control this woman, but events were increasingly unfolding beyond his expectations. "If Your Highness remains uneasy, feel free to have me monitored until I formulate the antidote. However, afterward, Your Highness must remember to fulfill your promise." Emily Carter's reminder darkened James Sinclair's momentarily softened expression. He coldly stated, "In your eyes, do I appear to be a base oath-breaker?" "Your Highness overstates the matter. It's simply that Your Highness is accustomed to standing above all others. How could you tolerate a woman defying you?" A mocking curve played on Emily Carter's lips. If she hadn't inexplicably transmigrated here, why would she have to face this man? James Sinclair stepped before Emily Carter, his fingertips gently lifting her chin, looking down at her from above. "Woman, you speak truly. Those who dare defy me meet no pleasant end. But Your Highness has stood at such heights for so long, I imagine you've tasted the full extent of the cold loneliness at that peak." Emily Carter's melancholic voice reached James Sinclair's ears, then pierced straight to his heart. "What do you mean?" James Sinclair gripped Emily Carter's shoulders, his dark eyes boring into hers. "Nothing, just a momentary sentiment. I feel Your Highness should learn to consider the feelings of others." Emily Carter didn't know why she uttered these words. The mockery in her eyes, she couldn't tell if it was directed at James Sinclair or herself. She seemed to have overstepped. "It seems I overestimated you. Such childish words coming from your lips." James Sinclair sneered, turning his back to Emily Carter, a chilling glint flashing in his eyes. "Look at the Emperor lying on the bed, 1 foot already in the grave. They say, all under heaven belongs to the king, all on the land are his subjects. He holds the ultimate power, yet isn't he still poisoned by someone close, rendered helpless?" Emily Carter, gazing at James Sinclair's back, felt a strange sense of unrestrained freedom emanating from him. Most can't resist the throne's allure, but it's like drinking poison to quench thirst. The more you crave, the more you lose. Heaven is fair to all. Emily Carter was long accustomed to the sight of death. Even the emperor before her, now a corpse, held no sway over her emotions. She had no desire to debate philosophy with James Sinclair. James Sinclair sighed inwardly. Emily Carter's words always held a unique logic, tinged with an air of detachment from worldly concerns. Dawn approaches. Shouldn't your highness return to heavenly prison and resume your prisoner's life? I'll arrange accommodations. Before the emperor awakens, you won't leave that place. James Sinclair's voice held a hint of menace. He hadn't forgotten catching her drugging Isabella Grant. Rest assured, your highness. I value my life. If I'm discovered linked to Duke Oliver's manor before the emperor wakes, the outcome won't be pleasant. Though James Sinclair lacked the self-awareness of a captive, Emily Carter understood. Failure this time meant future trouble. Woman, don't think yourself so clever. Some things aren't as simple as you believe. Before Emily Carter left, James Sinclair uttered this cryptic remark. What puzzled her wasn't the statement itself, but his motivation for saying it. James Sinclair arranged for Emily Carter to stay in an inconspicuous dwelling. Compared to Duke Oliver's manor, the surrounding area resembled a slum. Even commoners in the capital lived like this, let alone those elsewhere. Emily Carter donned coarse clothing, her presence attracting little attention. Henry Blake, however, was different. His azure robes screamed luxury, his striking features enhancing his radiance, rivaling dozens of lit candles. Hearing footsteps outside, Emily Carter instinctively gripped the dagger in her sleeve. She was surprised to find Henry Blake, uninvited. General Lamb? Emily Carter frowned slightly. Henry Blake, alone, wasn't here to arrest her. Could there be unwelcome news? Miss Carter seemed surprised to see me. Henry Blake's characteristic smile appeared affable, yet Emily Carter detected a subtle detachment in his eyes, less warmth than their first encounter. I am surprised General Lamb found this place so quickly. Emily Carter spoke calmly. James Sinclair wouldn't be careless enough to reveal her location. Henry Blake had sought her out. Henry Blake replied with a gentle smile, unfazed by Emily Carter's probing. I'm just a little worried about Miss Carter's safety. I've heard about the assassin incident in the palace the other day. Surely, Miss Carter played a part in it, didn't you? General Lamb already knows everything. Why bother asking? Does Miss Carter dislike me that much? A strange glint flashed in Henry Blake's eyes, a hint of hurt in his voice. Emily Carter felt a little helpless, but still replied coldly, actually, I just don't like beating around the bush. I'm too lazy to guess what's true and what's false. Compared to the mental sparring with Henry Blake, Emily Carter preferred the straightforwardness between her and James Sinclair, even though they had never had a proper conversation. Miss Carter is truly different. No wonder she intrigued him. Such a major incident happened in the palace, yet General Lamb still has the mood to stroll outside. It seems General Lamb isn't worried about His Majesty's life. No, no. Henry Blake raised a finger in front of Emily Carter. If someone else heard Miss Carter's words, would be accused of treason. General Henry is actually concerned about this. I thought General Henry was someone who feared neither heaven nor earth. Emily Carter was exhausted from the previous night, and now she had to muster her energy to deal with Henry Blake. It felt like she had just gone through a dozen-hour surgery. Henry Blake's lips curled slightly, accepting Emily Carter's compliment. I'm here because I have something to tell Miss Carter. Please, General Lamb. Emily Carter replied seriously. Tonight, the person on duty at the dungeon cell is the elder brother of my deputy general. If Miss Carter has someone she wants to see in Duke Oliver's manor, you can go there in a few hours. Emily Carter was overjoyed. Really? She had been worried about Mia Hayes and the others. This matter involved everyone in Duke Oliver's manor. If Elliot Sinclair couldn't clear his name, they would all face death. I can't release them, but if Miss Carter can see them, it should give you some peace of mind. Seeing a smile finally appear on Emily Carter's face, Henry Blake's lips also curved slightly. Chapter 30 Piece Emily Carter was very grateful for Henry Blake's help. This was the third time. General Lamb has always helped me, but I don't know how to repay your kindness. Emily Carter maintained a polite and distant attitude towards Henry Blake. Her words caused the genuine smile in Henry Blake's eyes to fade. Miss Carter doesn't need to be so formal. If you want to repay me, why don't you have a few drinks with me when you're free? The good thing from last time was completely ruined by Elliot Sinclair, and Henry Blake still remembered it clearly. Emily Carter nodded, completely forgetting Elliot Sinclair's previous warning. Then I'll take my leave. Someone will escort Miss Carter to the dungeon cell after dark. Although the dungeon cell didn't hold only serious offenders like Heavenly Prison, it wasn't a place one could enter and exit freely. Without an imperial edict, even the Queen didn't have the right to enter, let alone Henry Blake, who was just a general. In the evening, Ethan Sinclair stealthily arrived at Emily Carter's place with a pile of medicinal herbs. His sneaky appearance resembled a professional thief who had just stolen some spoils of war. How could anyone associate him with the identity of the esteemed Sixth Prince of Heaven's Ascend Kingdom? Sixth Prince, have you procured all the medicinal ingredients I requested? Yes, all 23 ingredients are here. The only thing missing is the golden ring snake. Third brother said he couldn't find one. Ethan Sinclair, dripping with sweat from taking a circuitous route to avoid anyone discovering Emily Carter's presence, explained. It's fine if it couldn't be found, but it's best to remain vigilant against the golden ring snake. Although she said this, Emily Carter doubted the Empress would be foolish enough to use the same method to harm the Emperor again. Indeed, third sister-in-law is truly knowledgeable. Ethan Sinclair's face was full of admiration. The renowned physicians were stumped, yet third sister-in-law could easily resolve the issue. Don't call me third sister-in-law. Elliot Sinclair and I have no relationship, Emily Carter stated coldly. Huh? How can that be? Third brother said you were his woman. Third sister-in-law, are you two quarreling? Ethan Sinclair clearly didn't believe Emily Carter. In his eyes, his third brother would never lie. Emily Carter didn't bother arguing with Ethan Sinclair. After curing the Emperor, she could leave, and the truth would eventually come out. Seeing Emily Carter's continued displeasure, Ethan Sinclair spoke up, third sister-in-law, don't let third brother's cold demeanor fool you. He's actually a warm-hearted person who keeps everything bottled up. Even when misunderstood, he never bothers to explain, but he truly is a good person. A good person? Emily Carter couldn't connect that phrase with Elliot Sinclair, but she could clearly see Ethan Sinclair's hero worship for his elder brother. Not wanting to hear any more, Emily Carter changed the subject. Sixth Prince, you can collect the medicine tomorrow at this time. Understood. I'll be here on time. Rebuffed by Emily Carter, and having received a similar treatment from James Sinclair earlier, Ethan Sinclair wondered what he had done wrong. Why was he always the unlucky one? Emily Carter had intended to send Ethan Sinclair away quickly, unsure when Henry Blake's envoy would return. However, as Ethan Sinclair opened the door, he found one of Henry Blake's generals standing there. Henry Blake, what are you doing here? Ethan Sinclair frowned, surprised by Henry Blake's appearance. Henry Blake's smile remained unchanged, his gaze towards Ethan Sinclair like that of an adult looking at a child. I have a matter to discuss with Miss Carter. I didn't expect to find the Sixth Prince here as well. Miss Carter? She's my third sister-in-law. You should address her as Princess Consort. Ethan Sinclair glared at Henry Blake. Although Henry Blake was his third brother's friend, he felt uneasy about him being near third sister-in-law. Henry Blake chuckled softly, replying calmly, "Miss Carter likely prefers this form of address." Emily Carter watched their exchange, more concerned with when she would meet the person she wanted to see. "General Lamb, if I recall correctly, you didn't come here to bicker with the sixth prince." Emily Carter's cold gaze swept over them. "If you've changed your mind about helping, just say so." "Of course not. We can depart now," Henry Blake said gently to Emily Carter, completely ignoring Ethan Sinclair. "Wait, where are you going?" Ethan Sinclair blocked their path, somewhat disgruntled by the feeling of being excluded. "Your Highness, we're heading to Dungeon Cell next. If you're interested, feel free to join us." Emily Carter spoke casually, but her head throbbed with the unwelcome interruption. Ethan Sinclair, upon learning their destination, surprisingly chose not to accompany them, obediently departing beforehand. Emily Carter and Henry Blake boarded the carriage, and within an hour, they arrived at Dungeon Cell. The Dungeon Cell guards, upon seeing Henry Blake, wordlessly opened the prison gates and respectfully escorted them inside. A putrid stench permeated Dungeon Cell. Each cell held no fewer than 10 disheveled prisoners, their eyes vacant and dull. "General, the cell holding Duke Oliver's Manor's family is just a bit further." The guard directed them, then turned and disappeared from sight. Emily Carter ventured deeper into the prison, finally locating the person she sought in a cell near the end. Mia Hayes. Alex Rivers. A flicker of joy lit Emily Carter's eyes as she stood before the cell door. Hearing their names called, Mia Hayes and Alex Rivers turned towards the entrance. Both exclaimed in unison, "Miss. Are you two all right?" Emily Carter asked, her heart aching. "Yes, we are well. They've only imprisoned us, and haven't even interrogated us these past 2 days." Alex Rivers responded calmly. Mia Hayes, however, upon seeing Emily Carter, burst into tears, her eyes already swollen. "Don't worry, I'll get you out soon. Alex Rivers, please look after Mia Hayes." "Understood, Mississippi. Please rest assured." Alex Rivers, now one of Emily Carter's subordinates, naturally regarded Mia Hayes as family. "I need both of you to be safe and sound," Emily Carter stated firmly. "Miss. Hick, I'm so scared." Mia Hayes had never faced such a dire situation. Past mistreatment at the royal mansion had only resulted in beatings, but in this prison, she'd heard tales of beheadings. "Miss, I don't want to die. I said I wouldn't let anything happen to you. Mia Hayes, you must be strong," Emily Carter urged. In this world, no one was obligated to help another, each person had to find their own way to survive. Seeing the encouraging gaze of her mistress, Mia Hayes nodded vigorously, though fear still gnawed at her insides. Seeing this, Emily Carter could only place her hope in Alex Rivers, who gave her an understanding nod. Just then, a familiar yet icy voice reached Emily Carter's ears. "I wasn't aware my woman and General Lamb were on such good terms." James Sinclair's sudden appearance shifted the atmosphere dramatically. Emily Carter didn't need to ask why James Sinclair was there, Ethan Sinclair had undoubtedly informed him. As James Sinclair approached, Emily Carter leaned in and whispered, "James Sinclair, you're a persistent ghost." James Sinclair's lips curled into a slight smirk, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "Woman, I believe I warned you to behave. If your highness can't manage something, should others be forbidden from helping?" Emily Carter had long known that the so-called heavenly prison couldn't truly confine James Sinclair, but she hadn't expected him to make an appearance here. James Sinclair wrapped an arm around Emily Carter's slender waist. "Tell me, how would you react if I ordered these 2 maidservants taken away?" Emily Carter scoffed, "Your Highness's threatening tactics haven't improved at all, but surely you've heard of what goes around comes around. You know who I care about, but don't you have someone you care about too?" Henry Blake, standing beside them, watched the charged exchange between James Sinclair and Emily Carter, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, feeling strangely superfluous. James Sinclair finally released Emily Carter, but not without a warning: "I don't like being threatened. You'd best know where to draw the line, or I can't guarantee what will happen next." "Who knows what will happen next? If your highness only came here to waste my time with these meaningless threats, it seems you're truly bored in heavenly prison," Emily Carter said coldly. She was accustomed to James Sinclair's threats, but to outsiders, they were always chilling. James Sinclair looked at Emily Carter. For this woman's mouth to be silent would truly be a miracle. "Your highness should be in heavenly prison, yet you're here in dungeon cell. If this news gets out, it might cause unnecessary trouble." "Don't you think so, your highness?" Henry Blake suddenly spoke, his voice edged with sharpness. "General Lamb's concern for this woman of mine seems a bit out of line." "Don't you think so, General Lamb?" It was similar to their confrontation on the street, only James Sinclair seemed much calmer, while Henry Blake appeared more agitated. "I do admire Miss Carter, and the boundaries of friendship needn't be so clearly defined. Doesn't your highness agree?" Henry Blake didn't back down, a coldness flickering in his eyes. Chapter 31, Escape the palace James Sinclair arranged for Emily Carter was extremely remote, dozens of palaces away from the main gate. Standing outside, Emily Carter looked towards the distant gate, scornful of the petty James Sinclair. "Sister-in-law, how long are you going to stand there? My arms are getting tired carrying all these medicinal herbs." Ethan Sinclair, holding a large bag of herbs, swayed precariously. Emily Carter turned to Ethan Sinclair, her coldness softening. "I've troubled you. So many herbs, and you had to carry them yourself." "No trouble at all. Isn't this what third brother told me to do? Stay by your side and guard. I mean, protect you, sister-in-law." Ethan Sinclair grinned at Emily Carter, nearly letting slip his brother's plan. Ethan Sinclair placed the herbs in the main hall. Emily Carter, using the excuse of "the Emperor's medicine cannot be delayed," asked him to leave. Displeasure flickered across Ethan Sinclair's handsome face. Not to mention the rarity of these herbs, he wanted to witness his sister-in-law's medicinal skills. Why would she want him to leave? "Sister-in-law, I'll be good. I won't disturb you while you prepare the medicine. I'll just watch." Ethan Sinclair, overcome with curiosity, ignored Emily Carter's furrowed brows, determined to stay. "Absolutely not. My medicinal crafting methods cannot be witnessed by anyone. If there's any mishap with the Emperor's medicine, neither of us can bear the consequences." With that, Emily Carter pushed Ethan Sinclair out the door, slamming the main hall's doors shut with a resounding bam. Emily Carter's eyes had just swept over the number of guards outside the main hall. Although the residence James Sinclair arranged was secluded, there weren't many guards around. It seemed escaping the palace wouldn't be too difficult. She poured all the medicinal ingredients onto the table, preparing the necessary medicine for the Emperor first, then used the remaining ingredients to concoct a tonic for the two guards outside. Creak, as Emily Carter opened the main hall's doors, Ethan Sinclair strode in. "Sister-in-law, is the Emperor's medicine ready?" "Here, the Emperor's medicine. Take it quickly, and be careful on your way." Emily Carter placed an exquisite golden box into Ethan Sinclair's hands. Ethan Sinclair held the golden box with utmost care, his gaze sweeping over Emily Carter's face. "Aren't you coming with me, sister-in-law?" Emily Carter feigned fatigue, her beautiful face showing clear signs of weariness. "I'm exhausted from preparing the medicine. I want to rest a bit. You can deliver the medicine for me." "But..." Ethan Sinclair frowned slightly, hesitating in the main hall. Emily Carter pointed towards the two guards outside, saying with a smile, "Does the sixth prince not trust me? Or are you doubting the abilities of the guards the prince assigned?" Hearing this, Ethan Sinclair smiled gently. "You misunderstand, sister-in-law. I'll take the medicine to the Emperor right away. Farewell, sixth prince." Emily Carter stood at the entrance of the main hall, a faint smile playing on her lips. Once Emily Carter was certain Ethan Sinclair had left, her expression returned to its usual cold haughtiness. She donned an inconspicuous servant's attire, concealing the bewitching powder within her sleeve. She walked lightly to the outside of the main hall. As the two guards were about to salute, Emily Carter flicked her sleeve, scattering the powder. The guards, inhaling the bewitching powder, collapsed to the ground, fast asleep. Emily Carter's lips curled into a slight smile. These were the elite guards James Sinclair chose to guard her. Truly incompetent. She stepped over the two guards, easily escaping. Reaching a deserted suburban area, where lush vegetation and ancient trees obscured the sky, she found a perfect hiding place. Emily Carter shed her disguise, gathered her belongings, and ran forward. Along the way, she kept glancing back, worried James Sinclair would send someone to recapture her. But strangely, even after running for nearly an hour, there was no sign of anyone behind her. What was going on? Judging by the time, he should have discovered her absence from the palace by now. Why was there no reaction? Emily Carter frowned, stopping to listen to the surrounding sounds. There was only the rustling of the wind and another rustling sound. Why such haste, princess? The third prince is in the palace, worried about the emperor's condition. You are the physician treating the emperor. Are you fleeing because you fear failure? As Emily Carter pondered this, a deep male voice echoed through the vast, empty forest. Hearing this, she raised an eyebrow, not giving the speaker a second thought. Her hand discreetly moved towards her poison pouch, but this small action didn't escape the notice of the person hidden in the shadows. It seems you truly intend to leave today. The figure concealed in the shadows materialized, and with a swift whoosh, another man wearing a silver mask appeared on a branch above Emily Carter. Emily Carter looked up at the man, her eyes cold and deep, a faint smile playing on her lips. Do you believe you alone can stop me? The masked man smiled, his sharp gaze fixed on Emily Carter, as if he could perceive her every move. Let us see then, whether your highness's poisoning techniques are faster, or my movements. With that, the man leaped from the branch above Emily Carter to one beside her. In a flash, a small pellet held between Emily Carter's fingers shot towards the man. This poison was incredibly potent, even a whiff of it dispersed in the air was lethal. Unfortunately, Emily Carter was a step too slow. The powder didn't touch the man's clothes. Seeing that the poison hadn't harmed him, Emily Carter wasn't angered, instead, her smile deepened. Whoever sent this assassin clearly valued her highly, dispatching such a skilled individual to retrieve her. The man landed lightly on a leaf, his body like a feather. Shall we continue playing? Playing? So you were merely toying with me? As she spoke, Emily Carter narrowed her eyes, killing intent radiating from her. Poison hidden in her sleeve suddenly launched towards the man. The man effortlessly caught the small pellet between his fingers. Glancing at the poison, he lightly crushed it, turning it to dust. A pity. This game isn't amusing. Your Highness's poisons are ineffective against me. Clearly, the man no longer wished to waste time. He was waiting for Emily Carter to wisely return with him. Emily Carter felt the atmosphere grow heavy, a suffocating pressure. It seemed this man was determined to take her back. Outmatched, I yield. However, I have a question. Emily Carter frowned. Without answers, she wouldn't return with him, even if it meant death. Ask away, Your Highness. The man stood on the foliage, arms crossed, looking down at Emily Carter at the base of the tree. How did you know I was here? Emily Carter had been extremely cautious. Even escaping the palace, she hadn't detected anyone following her. How had this man found her? The man turned to Emily Carter, his voice a low rasp that echoed through the trees. That, young lady, is a question for my master. A subtle smile flickered across Emily Carter's face. Though the man hadn't revealed who wanted her back, she had a strong suspicion. Thunk. The man in the silver mask dropped a sack to the ground and knelt, respectfully addressing the figure seated in the chair of authority. I have fulfilled your command, master. She has been captured. You damned slave. How dare you stuff Princess Consort Emily into a sack and bring her back? The woman sitting next to him furrowed her brows and shouted at the man. The man bowed his head, clasped his hands, and replied, Your Majesty, this was done at the Princess Consort's own request. The man sitting in the head seat slowly set down his teacup and waved his sleeve, signaling the man to withdraw. The man stepped forward and untied the sack in front of him. Emily Carter struggled free, and the first thing she saw were the two important figures she had anticipated, the Queen and Royal Uncle. Emily Carter's expression remained calm, her eyes gleaming. May I ask why your Majesty and Royal Uncle have summoned me here? What important matter do you have? Royal Uncle was about to speak when the Queen waved her sleeve, signaling him to be silent. She bent down, helped Emily Carter up from the ground, and seated her on a chair. Emily Carter dared not accept this kindness from the Queen. She chuckled coldly and said, What does your Majesty mean by this? What virtue do I possess to deserve such good treatment from your Majesty? You are certainly worthy. The Queen, with a dignified demeanor, revealed a knowing smile. She turned and whispered a few words in Royal Uncle's ear. Royal Uncle nodded and stood up, walking out. Now, only Emily Carter and the Queen remained in the dimly lit room. The surroundings were very quiet, so quiet that Emily Carter could hear her own breathing. The Queen picked up the teapot, inverted a green teacup, and poured the tea. After pouring a cup, the Queen didn't rush to offer it to Emily Carter. Instead, she placed the steaming cup on the table. I want to make a wager with you. I wonder if you are willing to gamble with me. The Queen spoke calmly, as if victory was already in her grasp. Emily Carter glanced at the steaming teacup on the table, her expression remaining indifferent. No one could discern anything from her face. If your Majesty wishes to wager, then I dare to gamble with your Majesty. Emily Carter still didn't fully understand the Queen and Royal Uncle's intentions in bringing her here, so she decided to temporarily go along with their plan. Good. I didn't expect you to be so straightforward. In that case, I won't hide anything from you. The Queen slightly parted her lips. As soon as she finished speaking, her gaze rested on Emily Carter's face, wanting to see her reaction to these words. Chapter 32, Surrender. Emily Carter's reaction slightly disappointed the Queen. She remained seated, calm and composed, as if she hadn't heard a thing. Today, my people were able to capture you, and I must truly thank the third prince. If it weren't for him telling me, I wouldn't have known about your talent for poison making. The Queen's smile was full of innuendo. It sounded like praise, but the underlying meaning was not hard to discern. She was mocking Emily Carter. James Sinclair betrayed her. Was that possible? If James Sinclair knew her whereabouts, why didn't he send his own people to capture her, instead of leaking the information to the Queen and Royal Uncle? As far as she knew, the relationship between James Sinclair and the Queen and Royal Uncle wasn't that good. What does your Majesty mean? Why can't I understand a single word you're saying? Emily Carter looked towards the Queen. No, you understand every single word I've said. The Queen paused for a moment, then continued with a smile, the third prince doesn't care about you at all. You struggled to escape, and he could just tell me your whereabouts. Why do you still want to follow him? Hearing this, Emily Carter finally understood the Empress and Royal Uncle's purpose in bringing her here, a scheme of alienation. A pity it was used on the wrong person. Perhaps effective on others, but on her, it was futile. The Empress is right. I, too, have only today seen the prince's true face. It truly grieves me. Saying this, Emily Carter took out a handkerchief, pretending to wipe her tears, weeping sorrowfully. Seeing Emily Carter seemingly persuaded, the Empress didn't hesitate to add fuel to the fire. She softened her voice and continued, "You and I are both women. I can't bear to see you suffer beside the third prince. I also greatly admire your talents. You should know, I lack someone like you by my side." The corners of Emily Carter's lips curled slightly, a cold smile revealing itself. The Empress had gone to great lengths to bring her here, using both emotion and reason to persuade her, simply wanting her to take her side and offer assistance. The Empress holds me in such high regard, this is my honor. However, there's one thing I don't understand. Emily Carter's eyes deepened as she asked in a low voice, "Just now, the Empress said that the prince revealed my whereabouts to you. How exactly did he do so?" A sentence as light as a cloud, yet it stirred up a considerable storm in the Empress's heart. Masking her unease, the Empress smiled and said, "Actually, the key to revealing your whereabouts lies within yourself." Emily Carter's eyes suddenly narrowed. Herself? How could that be? While she was lost in thought, she suddenly caught a faint scent of medicinal powder on herself. Seeing Emily Carter's dark pupils gradually widen, a hint of smugness appeared in the Empress's heart. Indeed, soul-bewildering powder is effective, but it inevitably leaves a trace of medicinal scent on you, making it easy for my people to capture you. So that was it. This was indeed her oversight. From the Empress's words, Emily Carter deduced that James Sinclair hadn't revealed her location to the Empress. The Empress wanted to exploit this to sow discord between them and profit from it. It seemed she would be disappointed. Not to mention, her relationship with James Sinclair was complex. He wasn't someone she wished to assist, and the Empress and royal uncle were even less so. Their interests diverged, two opposing sides forcing her to choose. She would naturally side with James Sinclair. Though that man was domineering, ruthless, and shameless, for the greater good, she would endure it. "Have you considered it? The tea is getting cold." The Empress calmly picked up the freshly poured cup of tea and swirled it gently. She was waiting for Emily Carter's answer. Emily Carter sat silently. Did she have any other choice? Imprisoned here, with no chance of escape, besides agreeing to the Empress's demands, there seemed to be no other option. "The Empress has spoken to me for so long, if I still don't agree, I fear I would be too unreasonable." Emily Carter smiled faintly, her gaze falling once more upon the teacup in the Empress's hand. Hearing her agreement, the Empress placed the teacup aside with satisfaction and poured another. The fragrant tea aroma immediately filled the air. As the Empress raised the cup to her lips, Emily Carter spoke coldly. "Her Majesty, the Empress, seems particularly fond of this heavenly cloud mist tea. She'd noticed it since the first cup was poured for the Empress. This fine, rare tea shouldn't be consumed in excess. You know this is heavenly cloud mist tea?" The Empress, somewhat surprised, lifted her teacup and questioned Emily Carter. Emily Carter nodded, calmly replying, "The tea's fragrance is rich, its color clear like jade. Perhaps only heavenly cloud mist tea, grown in frigid climates, could possess such a captivating aroma. It seems you're not only skilled in poison-making, but also quite knowledgeable about tea." The Empress regarded Emily Carter with approving eyes. It seemed she had gained a valuable asset. The smile on Emily Carter's face vanished, replaced by a chilling coldness. Her voice dropped to a frightening low, "Thank you for your praise, Your Majesty, but you should know that while heavenly cloud mist tea is a rare and exquisite beverage, it should never be consumed in large quantities." Clearly, the Empress was unaware of the secret behind this tea. Emily Carter, perceiving the Empress's dawning apprehension, offered a gentle warning, "Your Majesty, as I understand it, heavenly cloud mist tea is extremely and cold in nature. While it may not cause immediate harm, given Your Majesty's current health, such cold things should be avoided. Consider this an opportunity to show goodwill to the Empress." Regardless of the Empress's thoughts, she had a plan to emerge unscathed. "Is that so? Have you discerned something amiss with my health?" The Empress didn't doubt Emily Carter's medical skills. She had cured the Emperor, so identifying a hidden ailment in her wouldn't be difficult. Seeing the Empress grow tense from her words, Emily Carter inwardly sneered, continuing, "I merely observed a slight irregularity in your Majesty's complexion. If your Majesty trusts me, perhaps I could take your pulse." "That's hardly a problem." The Empress rose and approached Emily Carter, offering her delicate wrist. Emily Carter, with a furrowed brow, placed her fingers on the Empress's wrist to take her pulse. Emily Carter frowned. Seeing her apparent concern, the Empress anxiously inquired, "Well, is something wrong with my health?" Emily Carter lifted her hand, a smile playing on her lips. "Don't worry, Your Majesty. Your body possesses a yin deficiency and cold constitution. If left untreated for too long, leading to hidden ailments, it could become incurable." The Empress paled at these words, no longer concerned with the veracity of Emily Carter's claims. She hastily asked, "Can my condition still be treated?" "I will prescribe a treatment for Your Majesty. Have someone prepare and administer the decoction according to the prescription, and over time, it will certainly cure you." Emily Carter spoke with feigned seriousness, leaving the Empress stunned. Trusting Emily Carter's words, the Empress instructed her to write the prescription immediately. Emily Carter complied, handing the finished prescription to the Empress's attendant. As she departed, the Empress turned back to Emily Carter, uttering a warning, "If you serve me with unwavering loyalty, I will reward you handsomely. Conversely, you should be well aware of my methods." "Yes, Your Majesty," Emily Carter respectfully replied, bowing her head in forced subservience. The Empress emerged from her chambers, gaze fixed forward, her steps measured and dignified. After a few paces, a figure followed, kneeling behind her and announcing, "This subordinate greets Her Majesty, the Empress. Rise." The Empress turned, looking down at the kneeling servant, her voice cold. "What news does my elder brother send?" The servant withdrew a letter from their sleeve, presenting it with both hands. The Empress accepted it, tearing it open. Inside were only 2 lines, the gist being that Emily Carter could not be spared. "This palace understands. You may leave." The Empress, having read the letter, ripped it to shreds and returned it to the kneeling servant. Before withdrawing, the servant clarified the royal uncle's intent. "Your Majesty, the royal uncle's meaning is that this matter should be dealt with swiftly and decisively." "Enough. This palace understands." The Empress snapped, her voice laced with irritation. The servant hastily retreated. The Empress gazed towards Emily Carter's prison, her eyes cold and filled with murderous intent. Her hand, hidden within her sleeve, slowly clenched into a fist. She turned and walked towards her bedchamber. Several days of tranquility had passed. This unexpected peace made Emily Carter question the Empress's true motives for bringing her here. Aside from preparing daily medicinal tonics for the Empress, she had no other duties. The Empress's treatment wasn't like that of a prisoner. The food was of the finest quality, and even the clothes provided were luxurious. But today felt different. Just after Emily Carter finished her midday meal, footsteps echoed from outside, followed by the door bursting open. Emily Carter remained seated, her gaze cold as she looked towards the door. 2 figures stood there. One was familiar, the man who had brought her here. The other man's face was ashen, his lips a dark purple, clearly poisoned, and severely so. The man in the silver mask grabbed the poisoned man's collar, dragging him before Emily Carter. "The Empress demands you formulate an antidote for this man. If you fail, you will join him in the afterlife." He threw the poisoned man onto Emily Carter's bed. Emily Carter glanced at the man. Had his tone towards her become so harsh after only a few days? She rose, approached the bed, and took the poisoned man's pulse. After a moment, she released his wrist and spoke indifferently. "I apologize, but I cannot cure this poison. Tell the Empress she may execute me now." The face behind the silver mask momentarily registered surprise, but quickly regained its composure. Are you jesting? If the Empress desires you to cure him, then you certainly possess the ability. I've made myself clear. I cannot cure this poison. Do with me as you will. Emily Carter's face was pale, her voice colder than the masked man's, sending a chill through the room. Hashtag chapter 33, save me, please save me. As they spoke, the man on the bed opened his eyes, his voice weak as he pleaded with Emily Carter. Emily Carter's cold gaze softened as she looked at him. This man must be a commoner, likely poisoned by the Empress's agents. Trembling, he reached towards Emily Carter, gasping for breath, barely able to form a coherent sentence. Seeing his agony, Emily Carter couldn't bear to leave him to die. The man, sensing her hesitation, said, "Could Princess Emily truly watch him perish before her eyes? Whether I save him or not is my affair. Now, get out." Emily Carter snapped. These assassins, who treated lives like weeds, had no right to speak to her. Just save him, and I'll get out right away. The man emphasized the words, "get out," gave her a complex look, and closed the door behind him. After he left, Emily Carter sat by the bed and checked the old man's pulse again. He'd been poisoned with silent death, a colorless, odorless toxin, difficult to detect even in water, a truly insidious killer. Emily Carter used silver needles to pierce several acupoints controlling blood flow, buying herself time to prepare an antidote. As the slender needles pierced the old man's wrist, his face contorted in pain, turning from purple to a deep violet. "Sir, please bear with it a little longer. You'll be all right soon." As she spoke, she inserted the second silver needle. After all the needles were in place, Emily Carter went to the medicine cabinet, retrieved her box, and laid out the necessary ingredients. She measured them out, keeping a close eye on the old man. Half an hour later, Emily Carter gave the old man the finished antidote. The pain eased from his face, and his furrowed brow relaxed. Emily Carter covered him with a blanket and, hearing the lock click, smiled faintly and sat down. The door opened, and the Empress entered, supported by her attendants. Emily Carter rose and curtsied. The Empress smiled warmly. "There's no need for formalities. Sit and talk with me." "Yes," Emily Carter replied coolly, noticing the Empress's glance at the old man on the bed. She asked softly, "What is your Majesty looking at?" The Empress met Emily Carter's gaze. "Well? Are you comfortable here?" she asked gently. "Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. I am well. How is the poison man now?" The Empress paused, then couldn't resist asking. A flicker of apprehension crossed Emily Carter's face. She looked directly at the Empress, her gaze sharp. "Does Your Majesty know this man? If I may be so bold, why did your people save him?" The Empress smiled, gesturing dismissively. "It was mere coincidence. As the ancient said, saving one life is better than building 7 pagodas. I am merely accumulating merit. Your Majesty is truly as compassionate as a bodhisattva." Emily Carter's lips curled in a sardonic smile. The Empress's composure wavered for a moment before returning. The Empress walked slowly towards the bed. Emily Carter remained seated, watching her intently as she approached, her gaze fixed on the Empress's face. Her complexion was rosy as usual, her lips were also bright red. Clearly, the poisoned person had escaped danger. Princess Ye's medical skills are truly remarkable, even this deadly poison can be cured. I am deeply impressed. The Empress returned from the bedside, sat down, and smiled, praising Emily Carter. Emily Carter smiled humbly, her clear black eyes like a mirror, looking straight into people's hearts. "Thank you, Your Majesty, for the praise, but I haven't said what kind of poison this person has been afflicted with, yet Your Majesty can guess it's a deadly poison. This also impresses me." She deliberately emphasized the word "guess," intending to embarrass the Empress. The Empress could no longer maintain her usual calm demeanor, forcing a laugh. "I was just guessing, how could it be such a coincidence?" "Oh, is that so? Do you suspect that I sent someone to poison her and then test you?" A few short dialogues caused the temperature in the room to suddenly drop to freezing point. Everyone's heart was strung with tension. No one wanted to be the first to touch it, because doing so would lead to a dead end. Emily Carter's face was devoid of any smile, calmly and indifferently sitting aside. Quickly, she chuckled softly, "Your Majesty is thinking too much. I have chosen to side with your Majesty, how could I casually suspect you?" Hearing this, the Empress's anxiety seemed to subside. Even if she confirmed that the Empress had sent someone to poison her, so what? Currently, she was in the Empress's hands. Could she overturn the heavens? "I'm glad you can trust me. However, I came here today with an important matter to discuss with you." The Empress no longer had the patience to beat around the bush with her. Time didn't allow her to continue wasting it like this. The royal uncle had spoken. If Emily Carter couldn't be brought to their side, such a threatening person should be dealt with sooner rather than later. Emily Carter nodded, waiting for the Empress's next words. The Empress took out a small, exquisite porcelain bottle from her sleeve and placed it on the table. "Open it and smell what this is." Emily Carter stared at the porcelain bottle on the table, boldly reaching out to take it. Opening the lid, she brought it to her nose and sniffed lightly. There was no particular scent. She then closed the lid and placed the bottle back on the table. Seeing her calmly place the bottle back on the table, the Empress smiled and asked, "So? Can you guess what kind of poison this is?" "Poison?" A look of surprise flashed across Emily Carter's eyes. She only knew that silent poison was a colorless and odorless poison that could kill people invisibly, but she didn't expect there were other poisons with the same effect. It seemed she still knew too little. "As expected, Your Majesty still doesn't trust me, otherwise, you wouldn't take out a bottle of poison for me to smell, right?" Emily Carter sighed in disappointment. She clearly knew that the Empress wasn't using this bottle of poison against her, but she still said so. The Empress was amused by her words. "How could I kill you? If that were truly the case, would you still have the opportunity to sit here and talk to me?" "What do you mean, Your Majesty? Is this really poison or not?" "It's just a small porcelain bottle filled with water," the Empress said calmly, seeing Emily Carter still maintaining a serious expression. The corners of her lips curled up even more. Emily Carter said nothing. Then, when she spoke, her voice had turned cold. "Your Majesty, if you have something to say, please speak directly. This little lady's courage is small, I cannot bear such fright." The Empress covered her face with her sleeve and laughed. Emily Carter's words were utterly unbelievable. Small courage? Only a ghost would believe her. "Today, I sought you out because I want you to concoct a poison even stronger than deep poison. Are you experiencing any difficulties?" The Empress's few words revealed her scheming mind. Emily Carter chuckled dryly. "Is Your Majesty joking? Do you truly believe I can create a poison more potent than deep poison? To be honest, I can't even concoct deep poison. Recently, besides preparing medicines, she'd only been preparing more medicines, medicine for the Emperor's illness, antidotes, and now she was supposed to create a deadly poison. Did she even want to live anymore? The Empress looked at her with an expression of utmost trust, but beyond the trust was a command, because Emily Carter had no other choice. Working under her, obedience was the wisest course of action. "Will 3 days be enough?" "I'll give you 3 days, you must concoct it." The Empress's tone was no longer as polite as before. Without waiting for Emily Carter's reply, she rose from her chair and haughtily strode out of the room. Emily Carter shook her head with a bitter smile. What was this called? Reaping what she sowed. She had wholeheartedly wanted to escape James Sinclair, and now, having jumped into this muddy puddle, even escaping alive would be difficult. Lost in thought, the old man lying on the bed slowly opened his eyes. Seeing Emily Carter sitting opposite him, he subconsciously remembered her as his savior and softly said, "Miss." Hearing this, Emily Carter hurried to the bedside. Seeing the old man awake, a smile appeared on her face. "Uncle, you're finally awake. How are you feeling? Are you uncomfortable anywhere?" She placed her hand on the old man's wrist to take his pulse, and after confirming there were no problems, she tucked him back into bed. "Miss, thank you for saving me. But this old man is poor and has nothing to repay your great kindness. If you ever need anything, I will certainly." "Uncle, please don't say that. I didn't save you, it was your kind heart and heaven's blessing." Emily Carter quickly supported the old man, preventing him from getting out of bed. The old man sighed, his deep-set eyes filled with the hardships of life. "Miss, I know full well that heaven doesn't show mercy to the poor like us. If it weren't for you, I would have long since met the king of hell." Hearing this, Emily's heart stirred. The old man's words reminded her that people don't get poisoned for no reason. Although she suspected the Empress, she couldn't be certain without proof. "Uncle, can you tell me everything about how you were poisoned that day?" Emily felt that the Empress probably hadn't expected her to be able to cure deep poison, otherwise, she wouldn't have been so quick to come and inquire about the situation. The Empress was truly cunning. Firstly, she wanted to use this incident to test her. If she could cure deep poison, she would order her to concoct an even more terrifying poison. Secondly, if she couldn't cure it, she would use this incident to take her life. Thinking of this, Emily's lips curled slightly. If the Empress valued her this much, she couldn't disappoint her. The old man recalled the events of that day, saying, "That day, I went down to the fields to work. By midday, the sun was scorching, and I was parched, looking for water. Just then, a young man came with a bowl of water, saying it was for me to drink. I was so thirsty at the time that I didn't say anything and drank it all in one gulp, after which I found it difficult to breathe." "What kind of person was it? Do you remember what they looked like?" Emily hurriedly asked, a vengeful thought already forming in her mind. "That person was tall, dark-skinned, and had a fierce look. If he hadn't been so parched that day, he wouldn't have accepted the bowl of water from that person." Chapter 34, Retribution. Emily thought it was the man in the silver mask. If it was him, it would be difficult, he didn't seem to be afraid of poison. It would be good if she had a chance to study it carefully. As she thought, her enjoyment of studying medicine as a military physician resurfaced. Seeing Emily's silence, the old man asked curiously, "Miss, what's wrong?" "Old man, I'm fine. Don't worry, I will definitely make the person who poisoned you pay," Emily said with a smile, comforting the old man confidently. This was a chance to teach the Empress's people a lesson and simultaneously put the Empress in her place. Why not do it? Late at night, lanterns were lit outside Emily's confinement, the bright candlelight illuminating a corner. Emily flipped through an ancient medical book with one hand, comparing it to the prescription on the tree, picking herbs to refine the potent poison the Empress desired. Refining potent poison was no easy task. Emily spent the entire afternoon poring over medical books and finally found some clues. However, she had a question in her mind: if it was truly the Empress who poisoned the old man, it meant she already possessed potent poison. Having usable poison, why did she want her to refine more? It must be because she wasn't at ease. Emily could concoct antidotes, and perhaps others could too. Thinking of this, Emily couldn't help but shake her head and laugh. People who had been in the Deep Palace for a long time were always cautious and on guard. Over time, they probably wouldn't even recognize their own hearts. Knock, knock, Emily heard the commotion outside the door. At this hour, the Empress surely wouldn't come again, would she? She put down the medical book and quietly walked to the door. Just as she approached, the door suddenly opened. "Why is it you?" Under the dim candlelight, Emily clearly saw the person standing at the door, her eyes filled with surprise. Henry Blake was dressed in simple clothes, his hair disheveled by the wind, but it still couldn't hide his characteristic elegant demeanor. Meeting the person he had longed for day and night, all the worries in Henry Blake's heart turned into the joy of reunion. Emily Carter invited him in. Before closing the door, she saw the guards lying on the ground. Turning to Henry Blake, she asked, "These men, did you also cause them to fall?" "They were no match for me, naturally they couldn't stop me." Henry Blake didn't hide his pride. In other words, he didn't want to hide anything from Emily Carter. Emily Carter nodded, a hint of admiration in her heart. The Empress had assigned these two guards to watch over her, and they were certainly more skilled than those James Sinclair had sent. Henry Blake being able to knock them down without being detected was truly admirable. Closing the door, Henry Blake saw Emily Carter looking at the person lying on the bed and asked, "Who is this?" "Someone I saved." "Let's keep our voices down, the old man is still resting." Emily Carter was very surprised to see Henry Blake, and regardless of his reason for coming, she was deeply touched. Henry Blake sat before Emily Carter, his gaze never leaving her serene face, and asked worriedly, "After you disappeared, I searched everywhere, but found no trace. I was truly worried about you, Moy." Emily Carter believed his words, Henry Blake wouldn't lie to her. If it had been James Sinclair appearing before her tonight, saying he was worried about her, she definitely wouldn't have hesitated to punch him. Believing his words? In her dreams. "Then how did you find this place?" Emily Carter asked in a low voice, her eyes not holding the same warmth as Henry Blake's, but rather cold and distant. Henry Blake understood Emily Carter's personality. Even if she was distant with him, he was willing to protect her with all his heart, not letting her suffer any harm, not for any reason, but simply because she held a place in his heart. "These past few days, I've seen people close to the Empress frequently visiting the apothecary in the city to get medicine. After carefully inquiring and hearing the names of the medicines, I guessed it was you, Moy." Henry Blake smiled gently, his answer firm. Emily Carter raised an eyebrow. "How could you be so certain it was me? Those rare medicines, if not for your needs, then who else would use them?" In this world, it was hard to find a physician as skilled as her, capable of curing all illnesses. Could she, perhaps, cure his lovesickness? Emily Carter smiled, her lips pressed together. Besides his exceptional martial arts skills, his attentiveness to detail was remarkable. "You're truly meticulous. If the Empress knew of someone like you, I fear she would feel surrounded by danger." Emily Carter wasn't joking. She had a premonition that the Empress might have already anticipated his arrival tonight. Henry Blake was a little embarrassed to be praised so directly, perhaps for the first time. "Oh, it's not that I'm meticulous, it's just that toward someone I understand so deeply, my heart unconsciously shares their joys and sorrows." As he spoke, he gazed intently into Emily Carter's eyes, the swirling depths seeming to draw her in, unable to move. Emily Carter nervously turned her head and laughed. "What's the matter with General Lamb tonight? Are you here to tell me that you have someone you care for?" Henry Blake clearly didn't intend that, but just now, he seemed to want to pour out his heart to her, hoping she would understand, and even more, hoping she would accept. "Whoever it is, I congratulate General Lamb. To be noticed by you, that woman must be the happiest in the world," Emily Carter said calmly. Henry Blake was an outstanding man, the dream of all women. A good man like him, she wasn't worthy of. Henry Blake smiled bitterly. Why should she congratulate him? If she knew that the woman was her, would she still say these words so calmly? "It's late, and this place isn't safe. General Lamb should return." Emily Carter's own safety was precarious, involving Henry Blake would only deepen her guilt. Two old friends reunited, why the rush to part? Just as Emily Carter finished speaking, the door burst open with a bang, and the Empress's cold voice rang out. Behind her stood a tall, dark-skinned man. Emily Carter wasn't surprised by the Empress's sudden appearance. Her gaze drifted towards the man behind the Empress, seemingly the poisoner her old man had mentioned. The Empress, spotting Henry Blake sitting across from Emily Carter, smiled radiantly at him. "General Lamb, what important matter brings you here so late at night?" Henry Blake's eyes narrowed, a murderous aura rising around him, his hidden weapon practically leaping from its sheath. The Empress, noticing his killing intent, gestured for the man behind her to withdraw. The man, his eyes fierce, looked uneasy about leaving the Empress alone, but unable to disobey her command, he retreated. Catching the man's look, Emily Carter became even more certain he was the poisoner her old man had spoken of. She remained calmly seated, unafraid. The Empress approached them, speaking gently, "General Lamb, there's no need for such tension. I haven't come here tonight to kill you." Then, looking at Emily Carter and back at Henry Blake, she added, "You must be worried about Emily's safety, General Lamb, to risk visiting her like this, am I right?" Henry Blake was slightly taken aback by the Empress's words. She seemed different from her usual sinister self. However, he'd encountered many who smiled while harboring dark intentions. If she meant to harm Emily Carter, she'd have to go through him first. "Why that look, General Lamb? Why such hostility towards me? Do you doubt my words?" The Empress seemed displeased by Henry Blake's tense expression. If she truly intended to kill them, they'd already be dead by now. This humble general wouldn't dare. "I'm merely surprised by your Majesty's late-night visit," Henry Blake said in a low voice. The Empress gave a cold laugh, observing Emily Carter's continued indifference, as if their conversation was of no concern to her. Could she have been wrong? Were they not sharing secrets due to a mutual affection? Doesn't the Hunt Princess have anything to say? General Lamb's devotion is truly touching. Hunt Princess, are you truly so hard-hearted as to ignore everything? Your Majesty misunderstands. My feelings for General Lamb are merely those of respect, not as you imagine, Emily Carter calmly explained, her words deeply disappointing Henry Blake. The Empress seemed to understand now. It appeared to be a case of unrequited love. But even so, she had a way to bring them together. Emily Carter and Henry Blake together would certainly be a much better outcome than her being with Gabriel Sinclair. Hunt Princess, aren't you afraid of hurting General Lamb's heart with such words? The Empress feigned sympathy for Henry Blake, pretending to be a kind-hearted advocate. Emily Carter frowned, replying to the Empress, "Does your Majesty wish to pair me with General Lamb? But your Majesty mustn't forget, while I may not be favored by the third prince, he hasn't yet written a divorce decree, has he? Such a shameless act, if it were to get out, would not only bring me public humiliation but likely a watery grave as well." Seeing Emily Carter's agitation, Henry Blake, thinking she was truly angry, hastily said, "Your Majesty, please don't misunderstand. My relationship with the Hunt Princess is purely platonic. There are no romantic feelings between us." The words, "Hunt Princess," caused him immense pain. "Hunt Princess, there's no need for such words. I simply observe General Lamb's deep affection for you and wish to facilitate a union. Since that's the case, I won't interfere further. Let fate decide." The Empress saw that Emily Carter finally couldn't hold back any longer. Even anger was better than her cold demeanor, it revealed her weakness. "Then I thank your Majesty." Emily Carter spoke coolly, turning to Henry Blake. Her voice, though not as icy as before, still carried a distance. "General Lamb, I appreciate you coming here late at night. If Her Majesty doesn't intend to punish you, you should return." Hearing this, the Empress gave a cold laugh. "I never said I would pardon General Lamb. Then I misunderstood. Does your Majesty intend to go back on her word?" Emily Carter was irritated by the Empress's ambiguous stance. In truth, the Empress was even more anxious than she was. A fist striking cotton offered no satisfaction. The Empress gestured towards the guards Henry Blake had knocked down. General Lamb injured my men and trespassed here. Does he think he can simply leave? Hashtag Chapter 35, To die for her, Your Majesty has arbitrarily confined the Hunt Princess. Aren't you afraid of His Majesty and the third prince's displeasure should they find out? Henry Blake wasn't afraid of the Empress. Having come this far, he didn't fear death. The Empress's eyes sharpened as she looked at Henry Blake, lowering her voice. General Lamb, are you threatening me? I wouldn't dare. I only implore Your Majesty to release the Hunt Princess. And what of you? If I could only allow one of you to live, would you die in her place? A murderous glint flashed in the Empress's eyes, sending a chill down one's spine. Without hesitation, Henry Blake's voice resonated deeply. If Your Majesty will allow the Hunt Princess to leave, I am willing to die. General Lamb. Emily Carter called out, her emotions complex, before the Empress could respond. The Empress clapped her hands, looking at them with feigned admiration. General Lamb's devotion to the Hunt Princess is truly touching. Such devoted men are rare. Hunt Princess, you should cherish him. She spoke to Emily Carter with weighty significance. Emily Carter nodded in agreement, a gentle smile gracing her lips. Indeed, Your Majesty is right. Such a devoted man, I should cherish. Her gaze softened as she looked at Henry Blake, surprising him. What was she doing? Why would she say such things in front of the Empress? Her words were deeply moving, and he almost believed them. But a lingering awareness told him it was merely a performance for the Empress's benefit. Pleased with Emily Carter's response, the Empress smiled at Henry Blake. From now on, General Lamb, you needn't wait until late at night to see the Hunt Princess. You may come any time. Henry Blake gratefully bowed to the Empress. This general thanks Your Majesty. There's no need for such formality. However, I cannot allow the Princess Consort to return just yet. I still have an important matter that requires her assistance. Hearing this, Henry Blake frowned at Emily Carter, deeply worried for her.